Oh, did we?
What did we lose?
Randy's placard fell down.
I mean, they would love it. They're mad that we're not going. They'd love to.
Good. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening, a unique meeting where we have the privilege of welcoming in our city councilor, our mayor, to join us, the school board, to discuss what I think is an exciting topic. So at this point, I'm going to call the Monday, August 9th, 2021 meeting to order. Mr. Bertram, Randy, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Here.
Ms. Novak?
Here.
Mrs. Mulligan? Here. Dr. Urso?
Here. And I would invite Amy, the clerk of the council, to do the same for city council.
Ms. Vittori?
Here.
Ms. Nenny?
Here.
Mr. Moon?
Here.
Mr. Mulligan?
Here.
Mayor Condrey?
Here.
Would you mind standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, I'll turn the microphone over to Jim, our city manager, to kind of talk about the purpose of this evening. Got the long walk, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. Is the mic on? Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. If anyone hasn't met me, I'm Jim Palahniuk. I'm the city manager for Middletown. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here. And thanks for the gracious hosts this evening, our Middletown Community School Board. So this is a rare occasion, but it's quite exciting to be able to be part of this partnership and part of this presentation. So my duty this evening is to sort of provide a little context to why we're here and kind of kick this off, and then allow some other people to give you a good deal more background on it. We had said our purpose this evening specifically was to discuss a joint venture between Butler County, Middletown City School District, and the City of Middletown to build and or expand a community center. And what this really is to talk about partnerships and opportunity. The partnerships that we as a city and the school district have already put together and have cultivated over a long time and continue to enhance over time. And I know I haven't been in this community very long, and unfortunately most of the time that I've been here, it has been in a pandemic. But what I've seen since the very time that I've been here is a great deal of concern on behalf of both the city council, the school board, school staff, city staff, and others to find opportunities for our youth and ways to not only assist them, but assist in revitalizing the community in the process. And a group of folks over about the last year started to talk in earnest about how do we find better opportunities for the youth in this community, particularly for enrichment activities, for training activities, for just fulfillment things, from recreation to arts to culture to any number of things, because there are so few opportunities. We started to see it manifest as well in just an increase in youth and juvenile crime, and it became that much more important. We started to see our police department, lots of different community leaders and stakeholders starting to talk about this as an issue. And it started to gain traction, and we started to focus on the idea of our community center, the Sunny Hill Community Center, that already was providing a lot of programming and things like that for youth, but had lacked in certain size and opportunity in programming. And then something came along that really sort of energized this discussion a good deal more, and that was the American Rescue Plan Act at the federal level. And I think whether anybody tends to want to like that plan, disagree with that plan, or whatever, it wound up providing $1.9 trillion in stimulus across all different measure of things in the country. And included in that, of course, is the fact that both counties as well as individual cities, other jurisdictions of government, and school districts wound up getting significant amounts of funding. So much so that it is a truly once in a lifetime, not even once in a generation, but once in a lifetime opportunity that really none of us have seen in our careers before. And to that end, the city of Middletown has been allocated $18,925,000. Butler County, $74 million. and the schools, I believe, around $33 million. And this legislation does, in fact, provide lots of different restrictions, like most federal programs do. But at the same time, there are great opportunities for transformative kinds of things when you look particularly in areas that will specifically address the negative economic impacts of the pandemic. And I think what you're going to hear about tonight very much is consistent with that theme, and it does that in many different ways. So what we said as a city, once we knew about this and started looking at how those funds could best be used, in our case would be they needed to be spent in ways that were entirely strategic, that were transformative to the city, that would truly make a difference, and in every possible way would leverage other resources and partner with other entities wherever we could. So one such partnership idea that obviously came out of this was the idea of an all-encompassing community center where not only we could provide lots of new opportunities for youth from birth to 18, but also to support the families that were part of that youth, create opportunities for recreation and cultural enrichment, and training as well. And in addition to that, it isn't just about doing this community center because it's necessary and because it's a great opportunity for partnership with the schools, but it wound up becoming a part of a much bigger vision that the city had for redevelopment within our community. And we can tell you when we talked about it being transformative and we're looking at ways that that will make a difference, we've really talked about major redevelopment or economic development projects within our city. And one of those will be hopefully a large riverfront redevelopment project. Another that you may have heard of is the town mall redevelopment. But then the third, and perhaps maybe the most exciting one of all, is what we're calling the State Route 4 Corridor Oakland Neighborhood Revitalization. And I have a few slides that I want to share with you tonight because this is really part of the bigger vision where the community center falls within and is an anchor to this overall development. I apologize in advance if this is kind of small. I didn't realize that you were going to sit quite so far away and the print on this is kind of small, but I will try to narrate it as well as I can as we go through it. So for some context, when we think about the State Road 4 corridor, it links the two cities of Hamilton and Middletown. And when you look up there, of course, there's been some exciting things going on in Hamilton with the Spooky Nook project, some $175 million redevelopment that's going to bring hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to downtown Hamilton every year for all sorts of recreation. At the same time, the city is looking very seriously here in Middletown at an equally exciting riverfront redevelopment. And those two projects would wind up being linked by the State Road 4 corridor. So it's a critical corridor now and will be very much in the future as it links those two communities. But at the same time, it is an area that was very dynamic, very vibrant at one time, and has fallen on disinvestment over time. And we want to find ways to bring a lot of that back. So our State Road 4 corridor redevelopment project really involves a series of things. Number one is what is another partnership between the schools and the city, the former Vale School site. Now, since that school was demolished, is now a very nice opportunity for high-quality, affordable housing for the community. And let me just give a little more context to this. If you can see up here, the Sunny Hill Community Center, riverfront redevelopment, our Oakland neighborhood kind of in here. And so the southern end of our corridor development is anchored by the Sunny Hill Community Center. The northern end by downtown. We'll talk a little bit about what's in between. So I don't know how well you can see that up there, but this map is included in the handout that you were given as well. But that area outlined in red is what we call the Oakland Neighborhood. It's an area that the city has wanted to revitalize for some time, that we've developed a comprehensive plan for, and we're working through a process, not only through some historic designation, but what we hope to do with a lot of revitalization, both to the neighborhoods and other housing development there. And at the northern end of that, as I started to talk about, is the Vale site, where we think we can see dramatic new mixed-use development of some high-quality, affordable and workforce housing, some owner-occupied housing, some mixed-use retail and commercial, and really be an anchor to that northern end. As you move down a little bit, that sort of goldenrod or golden area there is the former paperboard site. That's 14 acres. That is now nothing more than a half demolished, dilapidated former paper mill that was on fire several years ago and now needs significant remediation, redevelopment. Just below that, the area sort of outlined in light green is the former AK Steel headquarters and research site. That's about 29, or no, that's about, I'm sorry, let me reference this exactly. I believe that is 24 acres. And then what used to be also part of that AK Steel property, but then sold to CERTA and since acquired by the city in blue, the CERTA site is 19 acres. If you take those three sites together, the paperboard site, the AK site, and the CERTA site, there's 57 acres there that we have identified as opportunities to fully aggregate, remediate, demolish any structures there, and bring them back as a high-quality research and commerce park to produce high-quality jobs, not only for that State Road 4 corridor, but for the Oakland neighborhood and for the entire community. So then, in addition, we hope to see a series of new single-family homes developed on scattered site lots within that community. We think there's an opportunity through the city acquiring them through the land bank process, some demolitions of former vacant and abandoned structures on some of those lots, to then make them available to local builders. And we think we can put together a kind of affordable homeorama where we can show that with some limited subsidy by the city and some assistance through incentivization, that we can actually create a market for new, affordable, modest, single-family homes developed within that neighborhood. So then we come, of course, to the southern end of that project, and that is down there in the and that is where the Sunny Hill Community Center is. So that really becomes the focus of what we're talking about this evening. So it is very much a anchor and a critical part to this overall vision of a redeveloped State Road 4 corridor and Oakland neighborhood revitalization. And this entire concept, not only is the city devoting about $6 million of its funding to through the ARPA, but we have made a formal request to Butler County for approximately $6.6 million in addition that would leverage all those projects that we talked about, and particular emphasis on the redevelopment of those areas that would be job producing so that they would be cleaned and remediated, prepared with infrastructure and utilities so that they could support some high quality new jobs in a commerce and research park setting. Also, of course, it would be to support the affordable housing and the other things that we talked about. But at the same time, as we've developed this concept for the community center, we realized that it could be greater than just what the city was imagining. The city said we could put $2.1 million to it, and then the schools had looked at it and said, we think there's a number of things that can go on here, not the least of which is preschool, other kinds of training, other things for youth, and felt that $4 million could also be going to it. But then we realized that if this could be seen as a partnership then that would include Butler County as well, a further request was made to Butler County that added $6 million. It translated then to what could be a really dramatic example of partnership between three different entities that would use these funds in a most strategic, transformative way that not only would anchor this complete redevelopment of this corridor, but would really get about this process of bringing back opportunities for youth, for families, for seniors, for all measure of folks in a true community center with some real focus on youth. And I don't want to take away the thunder from the people that are going to really tell you a lot more about this project, but I wanted to give you some context of why this was more than just a single project of a community center or a youth opportunity. It really is this anchor to a much, much larger and grander project that is part of even a greater strategic effort on behalf of the city to sort of redevelop our entire community in a transformative way. And if I could, if you would indulge me for a second, and this is included in your packet as well, And this actually was the language that was submitted to the county when we were asking for these funds. And I think it's worthwhile just to read it. So if you'll indulge me, it really gives sort of the best understanding of what kind of this project is and what we think it'll do. In order for the city and county to thrive, our youth must be healthy, safe, and enriched. This concept forms the cornerstone of building successful families and modern workforces and serves to protect and assure the future of our communities. Currently, the youth of Middletown suffer from a lack of resources due to years of disinvestment in youth facilities, programming, and family enrichment. This is readily evident in the significant increase in violent crime being committed by juvenile offenders and increasing difficulty for employers to locate a competitive workforce in our communities. In order to address these concerns and in turn to improve our community, the coalition, and the coalition is this group of partners and stakeholders that have been working on this for some time, which includes the city and the schools, is setting out to raise a total budget of $12.1 million in order to fund a major renovation and expansion of the Robert Sonny Hill Community Center. Currently, the Community Center provides community resources for those in need and is home to youth programming and job training for adults. But the current facility is sorely lacking in overall capacity and functionality, lacks modern amenities and equipment, and struggles to meet even the minimal needs of the neighborhood, let alone the entire community. However, in the grander vision of our reimagined community center, the coalition anticipates serving significant numbers of additional youth from birth to graduation, as well as their family units across the full spectrum of human and community need. The rescue plan specifically contemplates using federal dollars in order to help address the needs of our communities in recovering from the negative economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. An expanded and improved Route 4 corridor provides Middletown and Butler County with a place for youth and families to recreate, to learn, and to seek personal enrichment and fulfillment at the community center. New jobs resulting from redeveloped and remediated brownfield sites, and many new opportunities for decent, safe, contemporary, and affordable new housing within a revitalized Oakland neighborhood. The use of these funds as contemplated will truly enrich all aspects of community life post-COVID-19 pandemic and will further serve as a legacy to future Middletown and Butler County residents who will be provided expansive new opportunities as a result of these projects. So that's what we told the county. That is what we believe. We think that this project could make that kind of a difference. And I think with that, I would turn it over to Ms. Debbie Hauser and Mr. Randy Bertram, who are going to give you a good deal more on the vision. How's that?
Are you switching the PowerPoint, Randy?
Yes, I will.
First of all, let me say good evening to everyone. My name's Debbie Hauser. I'm the Assistant Superintendent here at Middletown City Schools. Stepping in for Marlon this evening. He is off representing the district, speaking in California, so we wish him well. So while Randy's actually putting up our PowerPoint for this evening for the project that we have ahead of us, I just have to say, isn't this an exciting time? We have never seen money like this before, and like Jim said, we will most likely not see it again. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So Randy and I were actually charged this evening. Jim definitely set the stage. Thanks, Jim, for all the details and the foundation that you laid with the project and the corridor. I get the privilege of sharing some of the ideas that have been brought up in the different committee meetings that we've been sitting in. And actually, these committee meetings, they've been taking place for a long time. Like Jim mentioned, you know, we've been having these discussions long before the COVID hit, you know, and talking about the youth and the challenges that we see in our district, well, actually in the community. So also, before I start off sharing some of the things that we've talked about, Randy, you coming up here? I would like to set the stage in saying the things that we're getting ready to talk about, they're part of the vision and the ideas that we've talked about. What we're hoping tonight is that we're going to get your support in this vision, and combined with what Jim shared with you and the vision that we're going to share, and that because these are ideas, global ideas, to actually reach out and meet the needs in our community. So we're going to ask you for that support, and then also your support to task us to move further, to actually start building the plans for the Sunny Hill Community Center. Okay, so these are the exciting ideas. We have, actually, can we go to, this is in your booklet that's passed out about the Sunny Hill Community Center on page 7. So we're just going to talk about, let's see, here we go. So if you guys want to pop over to page 7, future programming. So Jim talked to you about, so first of all, we have almost 1 out of every 4 of our Middletown residents are under the age of 18. So this program and this project directly reaches out and touches 1 out of every 4 members of our community. And also, it's not just them, it's their family, right? It's the family unit. It's everyone in the community, but not just Middletown, surrounding communities that we're talking about. So the first thing that we've talked about for the future programming of the center is to actually build on the expansion of Head Start. We have a Head Start unit at right now, but it's expanding upon those programs and the preschool and childcare at Sunny Hill. So as I'm looking out at all of my friends over here, we've been talking about the importance of early success by 6, right? The goals and the initiatives that we have in the community to actually build those programs and address the needs of our, of our youngest members. So at Sunny Hill, we've talked about expanding the programs, adding additional preschool programs at Sunny Hill. We know what, in a nutshell, we know what preschool, the benefits of preschool, from the their brains are still developing. Before they actually hit kindergarten. Also, not only is it preschool, but it also childcare, right? So we have the development of our youngest, and then also childcare, which then we know in return helps the workforce development. We have our parents, a place for the childcare, so our parents can actually go off to the job each day. So building upon that in the Sunny Hill facility, and just all the initiatives that we've had in the past when it comes to Head Start and early childhood programs. So we've talked about that. Also, we've talked about adding the Boys and Girls Club. We've been talking to the Boys and Girls Club and the representation from, I think it's their Liberty Center, right? Talking with them and planning programs. So right now we have our youth, they are hungry. They're hungry for something to do after school. So, we have many that are involved in our extracurriculars, but we still have, and then also Jim talked about all the development that's going to take place down in the neighborhood. So our youth, they need a place to go, right? So a place where they can build those relationships. We have mentors for them, career training, workforce development. So between the ages of 5 and 18, just providing, it's almost like a one-stop shop for our children. They go to the community center. We may have the preschool. We have Boys and Girls Club. We're building upon the extracurriculars, which would, summer camps. With your Boys and Girls Clubs, you see summer camps, right? So like I said, our youth are hungry. Jim mentioned the crime rate. We've seen an increase in crime within our juvenile population. So they need things to do. Right? And this is definitely an answer to build those programs. Have we gotten down in the weeds to actually talk about those programs? Not yet. That's what we're hoping for tonight, that you give us that support and that go-ahead to say, start planning. Plan for those programs. Plan for our youth. Let's see. Also with the Boys and Girls Clubs, there are mentors that are involved. It's developing our youth, developing career awareness. So many different opportunities with the Boys and Girls Club. I'm sure many of you have worked with the Boys and Girls Club over the years, and you know what a dynamite job that they're actually able to do for our youth. Okay, third thing we're talking about, the addition of indoor and outdoor recreational facilities. So what is that? That's like the bike path, right? That's the walking trails. We see the completion of the Greater Miami bike path, as we drive down the street now. So it's opportunities to actually build upon recreation and those opportunities to provide to our students, right? Like I said, they're looking for them. We'd like to create a one-stop shop at Sunny Hill Community Center. So really they walk in the door and they have plenty of activities ahead of them, right? So all they know is they walk down the street in the front doors and they know that they'll have plenty of recreational activities. So then we have, and then we also, I have to say, we all know the research behind physical activity, right? Youth, well, actually not just youth, it's all of us, right? Getting out there, physical activity, just the whole person development. Children dealing with anxiety right now and stress. So that just really developing the physical activities that we'd have available at Sunny Hill. Then we have also an exciting possibility is to develop a space with a commercial kitchen. So just think about what that would potentially bring to Sunny Hill. Not only would it provide on-the-job, real-job workforce training for people that were actually considering going into the entertainment or industry, real job training for a chef, but also provides, and then we'd have a rental space where the community could actually come in, right, use the kitchen for a small fee, which actually contributes to the sustainability conversation that we'd have for Sunny Hill. So multiple purposes there, for the, and then also that's right in line with Middletown City Schools' strategic vision, developing the pathways. This may be somewhat of a nutrition pathway, but it's another resource that we would have right within our community that would support all the different initiatives that we're trying to actually accomplish with great potential. So we may start out with just a couple ideas, but that definitely, the commercial kitchen has the ability to really grow. Community garden, right? We've talked about community gardens, right? We've seen gardens in other communities where people are actually able to come and parcel out a garden plot, right? Grow their own fruits and vegetables. That quite a bit of learning, right? But then also too, the garden plots could also support the career pathways that we're actually in the process of creating with our strategic vision. Gardening, grow your own. Your imagination can go a million different ways with the garden plots. So those are really the high level ideas that we've had just from working with the different committees. Are these the only ideas? No. There's a plethora of different directions that we can go. Just having the community center and to build those, like what I always call one-stop shop activities and outlets and experiences for the youth that we have. With Butler County anticipating thousands of new workforce positions that are coming along in the future, that all starts with developing your youth and producing strong families. Strong families that develop your workforce, and then that's a sustainable community. So I think I hit all of that. What do you want to add? Lots of opportunity. We have money and lots of opportunity and lots of great brains sitting around the table to actually work together and provide this opportunity for our children.
Good evening. I'm Randy Bertram, Treasurer for Middletown City Schools, or if Marlon's listening, proud Treasurer of Middletown City Schools. What I'd like to talk about briefly is from the beginning of these discussions, we have brought in many of the organizational communities that we felt would have an impact on the discussion. And I'm not going to go into depth with all these organizations, but you can certainly see that we want total involvement throughout the city to make this happen. We need total involvement. Many organizations have sat at the table with us. I think I counted 10 up there real quick here. And every one of them has had positive input and a very high interest in coming on board with us. very important piece. We can't do it alone as much as Jim has added input, and Mr. Stiles and myself and CBI. There's still many more out there that we plan to bring into this process once the council and board give us the go-ahead. So again, there is a piece of paper in front of you with 3 things we want you to do for us tonight. I hope you can find it. With support from Middletown City Council School Board for Sunny Hill Junior Community Center Expansion Project. We want support from you to reach out and ask Butler County for the $6 million. I know through the school district, we'll do it through a board resolution. And Jim, you had an idea doing it through?
City council resolution, hopefully as well, yeah.
Okay, another city council resolution. Then the final thing we're asking for is the go-ahead to move forward. So we'll eventually get into a discussion area where it'll be time for you to ask questions, have discussions, and talk about these things. So as we go, you do have questions, be sure to raise your hand as well. With no further ado, we've got 3 individuals that are going to speak to you that have been part of this coalition to make it happen. And we have Mr. Stephen Hightower II starting it out. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Randy. To the mayor, members of council, school board, administration, and staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about this project that we're all so passionate about today. Kwanzaa, Juneteenth, Middletown's role in the Underground Railroad. These are just a few of the things that myself and thousands of other middies have learned about growing up in the sunny Robert Hill Community Center. We sit at the feet of Middletown greats like Kendall Wright, Steve Hightower, Michael Bailey, Syl Thompson, and Middletown's first black mayor, Mr. Robert Sonny Hill. And they taught us that we too could be great if we worked hard enough and we believed in what we were doing and worked with integrity. And now it's our time to pass this on to the next generation. Every time I open up the paper and see another tragedy with one of our youth involved, my heart aches. And we have to do something about that. And I can't just think if there's anything that we could do to prevent that. About a few months ago, or last year, it's a similar situation where a young person had died, and had a meeting over here with some of the kids that I mentored, and I could just see the pain in their eyes. And I came over and met with members from CBI and said, we must do something. If we cannot do this on our watch, then what are we really doing as citizens, as community members? If we cannot save our own youth's lives, then how are we supposed to say that we are change agents? A new revitalized community center will give us a chance to intercede in the life of the youth, to provide mentoring, counseling, recreation, and a place where a kid can just go and be a kid. The vision of the new center is not for youth, but the entire family and community. The ideas are limitless. A culinary institute, a business incubator, career training. Those are just a few of the potential services that we can imagine. The whole of community effort. We will take the time to engage with the community. What are our needs? What does the community really want this to be? And how can we best serve our community? Engage the business community. It's going to take all of Middletown to make this happen and to be successful. Things are going great in the city, and I've never been more excited to be a part of it. The town mall, the downtown riverfront, the work that you guys are doing is transforming this city in ways I couldn't imagine just 5 years ago. Picture a state-of-the-art community center welcoming you into Middletown as you come down Route 4, and what that would do to lift up the South End. Bright past, brighter future. That is the motto. This is our opportunity to take a giant step towards that giant future. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call up Ms. Deanna Shores from the Youth Coalition.
Good evening. My name is Deanna Shores. I am the project coordinator for the Coalition of a Healthy Middletown, which is morphed really into the Middletown Youth Coalition, which I'll give a little plug, nycteens.com, nycteens.com. It takes 30 seconds for your teen to sign up. But not only am I that, but I am also a proud mother of 3 middies, one of whom is graduating from UC this semester and is a center kid. All of my children have come at some point through the community center, and just as a ditto to everything that Mr. Hightower has stated, it is truly a gem and a jewel to our community. But I wanted to concentrate my time a little bit on what we do at the coalition in terms of, there's lots of data in this room. I bet we got all kinds of statistics and things that we can talk about. But for the sake of time, I want to concentrate on 2 things. One, 2 things that we all seem to agree upon in Middletown. One, we need a Chick-fil-A. We need a Chick-fil-A, okay? So we all agree on that. I can't do anything about that today, but I can say also that our teens need safe, structured, and supervised out-of-school opportunities. And we have been saying this for a long time. I have children 22, 12, and 8. And we've been out here, a lot of us working hard to make sure that these things happen. Again, some of the names that you mentioned of boots on the ground and making these streets safer and brighter for our children. But what we also know is that many of our teens are having problems. I can sit up here again and give you some statistics, but we know that they are having problems sleeping. They're not talking to other adults about their problems. They're experiencing an increase in anxiety and depression, isolation, and I know that we may not want to mention and talk about, but thoughts of suicide have increased among this age group considerably. So this is why our focus are the tweens and teens, because we know that having a safe space in place is going to be important to their future. The Middletown Youth Coalition, MYC, works in collaboration with the school system and organizations like CBI in order to strategically address these challenges. What we also know is teens who participate in safe, structured, and supervised activities see a decrease in these kinds of issues. Risk factors are often what we talk about. You might hear these called risk factors. And they are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. So NYC is a youth-led initiative that works to build little bridges everywhere in order to connect teens to their peers, to caring adults, and to community resources, resulting in an increase of protective factors. So you might say, well, what does all this have to do with the community center? Well, we need the spaces and places in our community to be equipped to meet the increased needs of our young people. So what an awesome structure and place to start this great work that we are all really have agreed to participate in. So by making an investment in this, in the Robert Sonny Hill Junior Community Expansion Project, we are positioning ourselves to better meet the growing demand of our young people. Thank you. That is nycteens.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. She hasn't changed from her board days. At this time, we'll bring up Karen Maney from CBI, Executive Director.
Good evening. That's always a hard act to follow, isn't it? She just is. To the City Council, to the School Board, thank you for allowing us to present tonight. As many of you know, the Community Building Institute Middletown has been contracted by the City of Middletown to run the community center beginning in January of 2014. So that's been almost 7 years that we've been able to serve families and to youth in the Middletown area. Using the center as a home base, CBI uses a two-gen approach, which is a two-generational that helps build family well-being by intentionally and simultaneously working with children and their families and to build their lives together. By working with families to solve problems, access new resources, and sharpen existing talents and skills, the programs offered at the community center creates experiences and opportunities for all families to reach their full potential and communities to thrive economically and socially. Over the last 7 years, we've served thousands of families. In this last fiscal year, COVID included, which ended June 30th of 21, CBI served 772 individuals and a total of 483 families. And through our programs, so primarily the most vulnerable individuals, we serve residents from all over Middletown. And the center continues to be the city's most historical and valuable asset. By far, our most popular programs have been our out-of-school programs and summer camps. But several years ago, we had to diverge some of the center of these programs. Although the building is 8,000 square feet, hosting adult, community, and youth activities in the same space pose safety and logistical issues. So several months ago, at least, I know Debbie said that they've been talking about this for a while, but several months ago, a team of us came together to think about how we could serve the youth more effectively. We took several tours of the Westchester's Boys and Girls Club to look at their building and hear about their youth programs, and to discuss a possible partnership for a possible partnership here in Middletown. Although the team was very impressed with their building and their programming, we are still in the early investigation stages of the partnership and what it could look like should this project be approved. But what the team has agreed upon is the types of programs that we would like to have for youth. Many of them have been mentioned, but programs such as youth expression, including performance art, dance, music, video production, and writing. Physical activities such as intramural sports, climbing wall, open basketball. Academic support that we currently offer, but on an expanded basis, including project-based learning. Leadership camps that offer soft skills, entrepreneurial programs, and college and career readiness. Should the plan be approved, we could also serve Middletown families and their preschoolers with the Early Head Start and Head Start programs, a child care center, and the workforce development program that's been mentioned here. And lastly, I am very excited about the commercial kitchen, because we would also have a commercial or a community space like we currently do, but on an expanded basis, that could offer community rentals. We're not trying to replace event centers. We want to have community and invite the community rentals into the center, but to be able to use a commercial kitchen to be able to help train our youth on how to serve, how to provide hospitality. But also, I went this weekend to Findlay Market, and they have Findlay Kitchen, which is a culinary incubator, and it's allowing opportunities for budding food entrepreneurs to be able to come in and run a kitchen without having to afford a storefront. These are all really exciting opportunities, because that's what our community wants to do, is to expand, develop, and grow. So I believe this project has the potential to dramatically influence not only the youth, but the families of Middletown. And I ask that the City Council and the board would actually join together in supporting this project. So thank you so much for entertaining us tonight.
So we talked about this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that the city, the county, the schools have because of the American Rescue Plan Act. And it is really kind of odd and unusual. I have spent almost 35 years in local government, most of that time as a city manager. And I've spent almost all of that time trying desperately hard to figure out how to finance things in local government with a limited amount of resources and a limited desire on the public to be taxed. So to actually find ourselves in a situation in this case where it really isn't particularly hard to fund this project if we want to do it, the hard part becomes that it be sustainable over time. So much of the discussion that we've had as part of the groups that have met on this is a recognition not simply that we can come up with a means to fund this project, but more than anything, that it has to remain sustainable over time. So as we discuss it and as we continue to discuss it, we've always talked about that form really has to follow function. So that as we design a form, it's got to be critically tied to what are the most important functions that really will serve the youth, serve the families, serve the community, but also be built in a way that will be ultimately economically sustainable over time. So the programmatic function that will happen there needs to be able to attract funding, whether that is ongoing recurring funding from other entities of government, whether there's grants involved, whatever that may be. There's also this concept of the culinary incubator, which not only is a great training ground, but is really about an incredibly important workforce development opportunity for the future. As we see more and more opportunities for jobs in the hospitality sector, in the food production sector, in the small entrepreneurial food-based kinds of things, these things work really well because not everybody can start out by building their own commercial kitchen, obviously, but when you have an opportunity to rent it and to learn in the process, it's also an opportunity to generate funds. So we've really focused on that, and I think the thing that we want everybody to understand is we don't know the answers yet on the final design, but critical to that final design and critical that everybody that's a stakeholder become involved in it is that the design not only be such that the functions are provided for, that we really get to what is really necessary for our youth, for our families, and for our community long term, but also with an eye that they be sustainable. Sustainable ecologically, sustainable from an economic standpoint, and sustainable so that, that building will endure, that building will persevere, and that if we're back here 50 years or 80 years from now, we'll be talking about what an incredible job it was, not only to construct it and design it, but how people realized that they found a way to make sure that it continued. And I think that's critical. And I think the legacy of the Sunny Hill Community Center, and it is old at this point, and it is served the community really, really well, is kind of a suggestion that there are ways to keep something going, and we have to make certain that we do it. So, that's the fundamental thought that we wanted to leave on this thing. We've actually produced a group of folks whose sole goal it is to look at sustainability and to continue to figure out ways that over time that will happen. The other thing that we think is very important for this, if this is ultimately to move forward, is there almost certainly needs to be a private sector fundraising campaign that will look to endow an important fundamental fund for this project, at least for the capital replacement, if not for also ongoing operational costs. But I think if we find a way to create the funds from these public sector dollars, then the private sector involvement needs to be about fundraising that will create an endowment that will be there to make certain that over time, as we have to reinvest in this facility, that there's an endowment that will do that. And helpfully also that if there is a need for, at times, if there are deficits, that there will be funding available for that too. So sustainability is a critical piece to this. And as we think about assigning people to talk about how we design it, how we move forward, how we make this work, a lot of it has to be with that idea in mind that sustainability is critical.
Thank you, Jim. Jim did hit the nail on the head here, and I will say the first time that we met as a small group to start discussing it, the first question out of Jim's mouth was, what about sustainability? So he's certainly on board, as we all are on board. $12 million will certainly take care of the brick and the mortar and the equipment and the furniture and everything else. But yes, we have to sustain this. I will say that we have taken a high-level look at sustainability. Working with the Boys and Girls Club from Westchester Liberty Township, we dug into their finances at a high level, getting an understanding what it costs, how they're able to sustain their money. And we certainly think it is doable. I think our approach will be different than their approach in some ways, not in every way. But grant funding is an important piece, and Karen Maney brought up a new term to me that has stuck in my head. Grant fatigue. CPI's been operating on grants for many years, as important as they are, as much as we need them. There's other things out there that we can certainly do, and these things are being investigated as we talk. I will say Karen took the time to kind of did a projection on what she thought it would take and how we could use this facility to raise funds. And we're not that far away from making it happen as we sit here and speak today. I'm not going to delve into the details of that, but it is very doable. I certainly believe it's doable, and I think the committee believes it's very doable as well, or we wouldn't be here talking to you tonight. So with that said, we're going to move on to the timeline of the project. Debbie, I can take care of it for you. It's a quick, yeah. Yeah. As we know, the ARP or ESSER money, as I still call it, we received ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. Jim, you were close. We're at $40 million, a little bit over the $33 million for the school district. Now we move into ESSER 3 or the ARP dollars. Being able to make this contribution is great, but I think the hardest task that we have is being able to spend the monies out within the timeline provided to us. We have until June 30th, 2024, less than 3 years, to have this building completed, paid for, operating. Well, we actually have till August 30th of 2024 to completely pay for it and get this building operational. But window is short, certainly can be done. I think after hearing this tonight, you realize we've come a long ways in a very short amount of time. But there is a rush, certainly, to build a $12 million building in 2 years, get all the programming in place. It's something that we'll have to be on a tight timeline to do, and I know we can all do that. All right. Back to you, Jim, on the ask.
So Randy has spoken a little bit to the ask for this evening, and I think there was a handout for you in front of you, and that is relatively simple. That is the idea that as a school board and as a city council, that we generally find this an acceptable idea, that we like it, that we support it. And in that support, we are comfortable with the idea that from the ARPA dollars, the city can put $2.1 million to this project. And then from the school's perspective, from the ESSER funds, that $4 million can go to it. And then number two, that we can in turn, as two separate organizations, partner together to ask a third organization, our friends from Butler County, if they will contribute $6 million of their $74 million in ARPA funds to also make this project a reality to the scope and the substance and the function that we've talked about. And then if that's the case and we can do those things, then most importantly, we would love to see involvement from both the school board and the city council and others who you would find appropriate to serve to create a new committee that would then move forward to figure out how does this project get designed, how does it get operated, how does it get maintained long-term, what does it look like, and how does it come to be on behalf of the entire greater community. Now, to serve that interest, we have looked as a staff from the city into our existing community development block grant funding, and we found that we do have some surplus dollars that also came as a result of the CARES Act funding that could very much be used to assist in the early design of this project. So we have identified $50,000 through community development block grant funds that if the city council would authorize and allocate that way, could be the initial funding that would allow a committee and others involved in this project to begin the process to try to understand the scoping, the sizing, the design, the functionality of what a project like this would look like, costing it out, et cetera. Because obviously some of the most important work that you do when it comes to a project like that are all those sorts of things, and that stuff costs money. So that's available to us. That's the ask tonight. So again, we appreciate very much all of your consideration of that.
At this time, we'll begin open dialogue, and we'll just sit down and have a conversation.
Is this something that council has seen already? Because this is the first time that the school board has seen it, so Is this new?
Could you turn the
Okay.
microphones up, please?
Everybody's not going to stand up there for our questions.
Yeah, this is the first time that we've seen this presentation as well, so we're all on the same page.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just thought this was going to be a conversation tonight as this was presented. But you're asking for a commitment as well, that we are willing to put $4 million behind this project this evening?
Yes, we are.
Ms. Novak, I wanted to say that I respectfully feel a little blindsided by the details tonight. Could you turn the microphones up a little bit, please? Tonight has an air of a celebration. It's almost as if we've gotten to a conclusion without having a conversation. And tonight, we've brought so many folks from the community in, almost as if we're walking out of the room celebrating that we're building a new community center. And as Ms. Novak indicated, this is the first time that I've seen how far down the tracks this project has actually gone. I mean, we have a number of folks that have put probably innumerable hours into working through the details. I see so many partners, many good community partners that we need to have at the table to pull a project like this together. Yet, we're being asked tonight to commit. I think that's a little premature, personally. I think that's asking a lot. As we go through this discussion, just let me make a couple comments. Tonight was referenced significant work on the corridor, and I recognize that's an important project, but I'm looking at the city's contribution of $2 million in a project that I feel, if that project is so important for the corridor, considering all the needs that are facing the Middletown City Schools, $2 million for me, I think, is a little short from the city, personally. Now, also, just want to place this conversation in a broader context. Middletown City Schools, we invested $10 million into Rosa Parks. Our commitment there to the kids and families in that neighborhood is significant. But we're facing a larger challenge. It's called a tax levy. Prior to this discussion, we cut $20 million in funding because we were looking at a tax levy. The city is also going to be running a tax levy. Our tax levy proposals of the future, I think, are gone for Middletown City Schools. So we have to consider this once-in-a-lifetime funding very carefully. And we also have to consider the facts as they are. And I want to share a couple of facts with you. Right now, across the building right here, Middletown Middle School, even as we are paying for it through our tax increases, is already at capacity and actually too small. Middletown High School is being challenged. We also have other schools that are at capacity, which is Creekview and Wildwood. Those schools are at capacity as we're being asked to put $4 million into this project. And also, thinking about context, we've had no time as a board, as a school board, to discuss how this project fits in to other funding needs. Tonight, at our meeting, here in a few minutes, we're going to be discussing some of the ESSER funds and how we're spending these dollars. But considering that we don't have the capacity to come back for a tax levy, that is, Middletown City Schools probably will not get another tax levy. Every dollar counts. We have to be very careful in how we invest in any project, however wonderful the project is, because it is. I'm very impressed with all the work that you've done. And for the record, I spent several years working with the Ohio After School Coalition up in Columbus, Ohio. I was a leader with that group. I also worked with Ms. Maney to help secure financing for the community center. I served on the board. This project speaks to my heart. I mean, I've been involved in community center work and after-school programming long before I got involved in the school board. But again, we have to think about the facts. This project here is wonderful, but we've had no time to discuss any of the facts as a board. So I'm a little concerned, and frankly, I feel blindsided that we haven't had a discussion, and that as discussions were taking place, that we as a board were not involved in any of these discussions with our partners. I think that's a shortcoming. So to my colleagues on the board, I would say we need to pause. This is not a moment of celebration that we walk out and say this is what we're doing. we have to have time to deliberate, and we also have to have time to place this project in the larger context and priorities facing Middletown City Schools.
May I respond? On behalf of my colleagues and my fellows who've been involved in this process to this date, I just want to let everybody know we're certainly not so presumptuous as to think that, this is a fait accompli or that we're here to finalize anything tonight. In fact, our city council, this is only a work session, so there's no actions here. If there's any actions to be done, it will be taken in the future. When we describe an ask, it really is about the future. I mean, we're here to talk about it, to discuss it, and to really have that discussion. So I apologize if in our enthusiasm, it seemed celebratory, but I think we're excited by the project, and we wanted to describe it in its full sort of form as we've imagined it, but not to suggest that any of these things or decisions have been made. So I wanted to make that clear. We're certainly looking to the future for you to figure out when or if, you would ultimately gain support to this. Secondly, on behalf of the city, when it comes to the $2.9 or $2.1 million that was dedicated, at least tentatively, to this particular project, the corridor itself, the city is putting well over $6 million into the corridor. So this is part of that corridor. So the way we look at it, we've sort of put it throughout there. And for this particular aspect of it, it's $2.1 million. But for instance, in order to make the Vail site, work, the way we imagine to have high-quality affordable housing, we're going to do something on the order of $2.6 million there. We've got another multiple $1 million going into the cleanup and the improvement of those sites for job-producing research and commerce parks. So, we have to make this go as strategically and as far as we possibly can. So as a result of that, it's the best we can do. We think it's a good, and if you feel it's not enough, we can certainly have that discussion. But it's what we felt made the most sense in this case.
Is there a level of time sensitivity to the $6 million ask from Butler County? Is that a pool of money that will evaporate if people don't ask for it over a certain period of time?
We've taken the position that obviously we wanted to be first in line because it is finite. A lot of people are asking, and they've not indicated when they'll make a final decision. So at some point, they will make a final decision, and once they have, it will be awfully hard to get back in line. So from our perspective, we wanted to be the first. We wanted to make our case really clear and advocate as hard as we can. I think a model that's out there you might be watching is Butler Tech. That Butler Tech asked for, I think, $24 million, 10 of which would be for a hangar at the airport for workforce development, another 10 of which would be in Hamilton for another workforce development facility. And they've had something like 33 different agencies in the county provide letters of support to advocate on their behalf. So I think they recognize the fact that if you really want something, you got to be out there, you got to be aggressive, you got to work really, really hard to try to get it approved. So, I think we're taking some of that same model to say, hey, we think our project is really important, we want to be first in line, and we want to advocate as hard as we can.
Is it viable if we do not get the $6 million?
I believe that it is. I think it's a matter of degree. Can we do all the things we hoped for? Certainly not. But I think if you could imagine that we'd have 2.1 from the city and 4 from the schools, then something of quality could be done. It certainly isn't as much as 12 million, but I wouldn't preclude us moving ahead with some kind of project with what we have, because obviously there's no guarantee that the county comes forward with funding, or if they do, that it's the full $6 million.
How did we determine which partners to include in the planning, and why didn't we include Butler Tech? Because Butler Tech is getting the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services grant from the county for workforce development. So it seems like they would be a logical partner for this project as well.
I don't think any partners have been precluded at this point. We're still very early in the planning stages. So I think if that would include Butler Tech, that would just make it that much better, because from a training perspective, they would be fantastic, particularly like on that culinary incubator. They might do that really, really well.
And we're looking at reaching out for many more partners, including the ESCs, the Butler Tech, maybe Warren Career Center. Yes, there's lots of opportunities for partnerships.
Okay. Well, have any of these partners made a financial commitment to the project and to the ongoing operations of the project?
Not at this time. We're not there yet.
Okay. Do we have any idea what our operating budget's going to be from looking at the Boys and Girls Club, from looking at the current CBI budget?
We don't want to get in the weeds too much tonight because of time, but I will tell you that the other Boys and Girls Club that we looked at operates around $1 million a year.
Okay. No, I do think that's important, though, if we're talking about sustainability, because we have to look at what our fundraising potential has been at CBI currently and with some of the other organizations, and how is our fundraising capacity going to improve if we change the building, and how much will it improve? Because, you know, we don't want to build something that's going to be empty.
Absolutely.
Are the schools
Agreed.
asking for any other ARPA funds? Because I know the city, we have other asks. Are you guys also from the county?
There, nothing else from the county at this time? No. There are other federal funds out there that we are vying for, though. Yes.
Okay, I just want to put that perspective too. I mean, obviously, the city has a lot of asks on the table for these funds.
And when we came together, I didn't ask the city for X dollars, they didn't ask us for X dollars. We kind of talked about what we could do with our ARPA funds. And, you know, back to your point, Mr. Moore, we did talk about this 2 other times at 2 other meetings, one being in June, but not in detail. Certainly, we were preparing for this evening, and that's why everyone's getting it tonight, same time.
We never discussed $4 million. I think that's one of the problems that we have here, is that while we can all agree probably that this is a wonderful project and that it's an interesting way to leverage funds, you know, our brainstorming session, if you will, when we talked about this, it's never really set well with me, because I always knew that there was going to be a number attached at some point. And I think that's where we're at. One of the problems that we've had as a board is we have not set priorities for the ESSER funds. Again, the board should be involved in decisions as we make discussions about future funding projects and building projects. My point is, there was never any discussion or any commitment that I'm aware of with my colleagues on the board that we would allocate $4 million to this project. I'm only hearing that tonight.
I agree with you there, but I have to disagree with the thing that we never set priorities for our ESSER funds. I do believe we set priorities on several occasions about the things that most impact the children versus the more peripheral spending. So I disagree with that statement. I also have a question. It's all new to me too. I know we've been talking about Boys and Girls Club, and I think that the idea of serving the community in this way is wonderful. To expand it is necessary. I'm wondering about site-wise. I don't know how much space the Sunny Hill Center occupies. I don't know, is expansion considered there? I mean, to get a better picture of what's, obviously people have been thinking. What's the thinking there?
Got that one, Jim?
I think on the PowerPoint that we had a little earlier, there was kind of an aerial shot of the Sunny Hill Center, so you could kind of see where it sits, and there is a pretty substantial park that it sits in with a lot of land around it, so there is quite a substantial opportunity for expansion there. I would ask Karen to describe exactly how many current square foot is there. I'm sure you would know better than I do, Karen. Do you know the square footage of that building?
About 8,000. Yeah, I think the current building is about 8,000 square feet. That is sitting on 15 acres of city-owned land. Okay. So the current building sits on the front part of the 15 acres. Going backwards towards the city limit is about 15 acres of undeveloped land that is used currently for parks, but the idea would be the building expansion plus some additional green space and outdoor space to be able to maintain the integrity of the park as well as provide the expanded facilities.
Okay. That's why with all the things that this was proposing as far as outdoor facilities and all that, I wondered how much, I didn't realize there were 15 acres available.
It's about 15 acres. And if you look on page 6 of the booklet that was passed out, there is an aerial overhead shot of where this lands. So what the current facility is sits towards the bottom middle of the picture.
I'm sorry, what page again?
Page 6 of the bound book that you received.
Okay.
And if you look at that, so towards the bottom middle, there is the actual current facility. Okay. And the city owns the green space.
Okay.
So just a couple comments and a question to Ms. Novak's initial point. Council did get and receive the request, Butler County's request, when it was submitted. So while we didn't sit down and have a formal conversation, we certainly were well aware of what was requested, including this and all the other requests. The other thing is just a little bit more commentary before I ask my question is, before I became a parent, I don't think I fully appreciated how critical it is for a community to not only have good programming like we're talking about here, but to have good parks. And while you might never see it on the bottom line, it's hard to grow families, maintain families, and recruit new families to come to town if you don't have the resources and the activities for families to involve themselves in. I see that every day with my kids and what they're looking to do as they grow. And then as far as the dollars, I think we're both talking about 10% of our ARPA funds. Actually, the cities would be putting in a higher percentage of funds. And but for these funds, this conversation would not be happening. So to Mr. Moore's point, certainly the city is not rich on funds either. But for these funds, we wouldn't be sitting in this room. And then I suppose my question would be on the Boys and Girls Club. Are we considering creating our own? Are we considering bringing Westchester Liberty here, or is that just kind of an open discussion at this point?
That's an open discussion at this point.
I'd just like to follow up on Mr. Moon's comments that I know as raising my own family that we've had to travel to Monroe, Springboro, Lakota, Westchester areas to find opportunities for our family to do activities that at one time were housed in Middletown. And where I would like to know a lot of those numbers that it seems like you guys have derived and worked through, because like all of us, when we make decisions, we like to know all the facts, but before making those decisions, I also understand the time sensitivity of these types of things. We were in a meeting just the other day in regards to our building project at Rosa Parks and just how much it's increased in terms of building spaces right now with the lack of materials and labor, et cetera, and understanding that time is a factor in these types of things. My last comment would be is that I sit in a room in a building on a campus that our community helped to build, and I'm very proud of the spaces. I'm proud of the Rosa Parks spaces that are opening this in a few days, and would have faith that the leadership that we have would be very frugal and careful and thoughtful. And with the Mr. Hightower's point from his speak, that any decision would be community driven as to what things would be in that space, that wouldn't be a small group making that decision. It would have many voices. And so I would be excited about investing at $12 million is a large sum. And where I agree in some principle to Mr. Moore's point, I would love some more details. But I also understand some of that in regards to it.
So then also to build off of that and piggyback, Chris, that tonight we were asking for support as a board or as a district and the partnership for us to actually continue with the discussions and actually being able to build the details. I'm very well aware that many of us want what we call down in the weeds answers, and and we have a commitment to our community. That's a lot of money. $12 million is a lot of money. And I think we all agree in this room that, a community center with all of these different opportunities for our children, that they are very well worthwhile and we could support them. And I think that millions of dollars behind it make it, we have to give that some thought. But in reality, tonight we were looking for support to continue our planning. We haven't had the time to go down in the weeds. We need to know if that's something that you are willing to bless us, to actually start looking at the details behind some of these programs. And yes, to Mr. Moon's comment, we do feel somewhat of a sense of urgency because we're looking at a couple of weeks that we have to identify how we're going to spend this money. So there is a sense of urgency.
And I think we get the fact that most people in this room, I'm not going to speak for everyone, support the idea of the rec center. I think the issue is, to a few of the points here, we're having a work session this week to really look at our ARPA funds and how we're going to spend them, and it sounds like you guys are about to talk about that as well. So it just feels maybe a little bit this meeting should have happened Friday, or maybe after we've all been able to really look through those budgets and feel comfortable with our numbers or not. I think, and please speak up if not, we're all comfortable with the idea of this project, but because we haven't as separate bodies looked at our ARPA budget yet, I don't know how comfortable we can all be exactly with the number yet.
What kind of support are you looking? Just like a thumbs up, thumbs down? Is it a formal vote? What does it tie us to? I look on here as $50,000 architect fee was the only number that it looks like would move forward. Is there things outside of that that we would be hinged to? What directly would support mean moving forward? Is it just more committees and more conversations? And then what would it look like? Would it be unanimous? Would everyone have to agree, or just a majority? Just some of those kinds of things, just so we know what we're looking at.
So my understanding is the support for us to actually develop those committees, have the multiple voices from the different partnerships sitting down. I mean, we have some general ideas that we shared with you today, but no, we haven't gone down in the weeds. So it's really your blessing to us to actually start formulating a plan. And then, of course, we'd be coming back, as we've formulated these plans and sharing with both boards, the council and the school board, of where we are with the planning. But right tonight, we were hoping for your blessing to move forward with that planning.
I like it that we're proposing to use some of this windfall money in a way that isn't squandering it on frivolous things and will actually be beneficial for many years to come. But I wonder, what are we committing ourselves to when we commit our money? Are we committing ourselves to all the details that have been provided here, or what's the package? So it's to give us the permission to actually go forward and start planning. The support behind that we would need. So, or otherwise, we'll have to stop.
But at some point, we have to agree on numbers, right?
Correct.
I mean, when do we have to decide if 4 and 2 are the numbers?
Go ahead.
Well, I think from the city's perspective, tonight is only a work session. It's rare that we have an opportunity to jointly have a meeting with our friends at the school board, so we took this opportunity to do that and to talk about this project. But obviously, as you had indicated earlier, it's later in the week that we're actually going to talk about our ARPA budget. So once we get through that, then sometime in the future, and that again is just a work session, we'll actually have a real meeting at which you'll determine what that budget is. And that'll be the first point at which you'll truly assign money to this particular project. But what we were hoping for tonight is, again, roll out the project so everybody understands what it is, why it sort of arrived at what we're talking about, get people to start to think about it, get comfortable with it, and to start to be prepared to ask all the questions, particularly as now we talk about the budgets as they come up, so that then you can remember, oh, okay, well, we heard about that in that presentation, in that session, so, okay, now we're better prepared. And I think that's what it is. You got to roll it out at some point. Tonight's the night to roll it out, and it's in advance now of hopefully getting to those points where there are going to be that more formalized request to say, hey, is this the right amount of money? Can we do this? Should we do this? And then if so, and we do ultimately put it, then also, to make sure that the county might be on board as well.
And do you feel like that county money is contingent on us kind of matching the funds? I mean, is that where we came up with the number? And how does that ask change relative to any different decisions that might be made on our budgetary end?
I mean, that's the way it was presented, obviously. So if any numbers change, then it changes the overall look of that. And, you'd have to deal with it at the time. But obviously, there exists that clear possibility.
And from the school's perspective, we've already approved the ESSER money to be spent. We just haven't got down into the weeds on exactly how we're spending that money tonight. I'm saying that verbally, we'd like to commit $4 million. Don't know that it'll end up $4 million. But like everything else that we do through our federal program and our state CCIP program, these monies can be changed at any time, but we have to initially start somewhere with the allocations. They have to know our initial intent by August 20th of how we're going to spend these monies through that programming. If something comes down the road and this program doesn't come to fruition, then we've got to sit down and discuss how we're going to move those $4 million and spend them elsewhere.
Mr. Bertram.
Excuse me.
Just a couple, just one comment. We've used the term windfall a couple times. I take a little, I'm on guard with that term only because, again, I think we all are excited about this project. I know that, again, I think you've done a wonderful job in presenting tonight, and so many folks in the room I know have worked hard to sustain the community center through time. So we have a great opportunity. But again, I'm coming back to numbers again. We don't have, Middletown City School District does not have the luxury going forward with the tax levy. So this is not a windfall. I mean, we have to start thinking about this. What I mean to Ms. Scheibert and others is when we talk about priorities, it wasn't that we should have come up with a wish list of how to spend this so-called windfall. We have money that we're going to have to figure out, I think. Tonight, I think we're going to be talking about this as well, but before allocating a certain dollar amount, I would like to have some time to work with my colleagues on the board. Again, we don't have the potential for a tax levy, and we have overcapacity at buildings. And we're talking about this project, when I think we should be talking about capacity in our buildings and academic achievement before we talk about where we're at here. If we could answer that first question and how we solve that problem, I would be very supportive of a project like this.
Well, let's, not that City Council needs to delve into the issues of the school board here tonight. When you talk about tax levies, the fair funding model that was recently passed for public schools really helps us for the next 2 years significantly, and it actually acts as a school levy to us. Albeit we wanted that to pass for the 6 years that we were hoping for, we have to wait another biennium budget cycle to find out if those dollars are going to be continued. So I don't think it's fair to say we are going to need a tax levy when we're not certain that we are.
I didn't say that.
I'd like to
Our
take a
approach
step.
to the county, the asking them for their part of the money, was it presented as it was here, tied to the Oakland project and all that detail? I mean, that's what they would be buying into.
Yes, in fact, were given at your place a detailed submittal of what we gave to the county. So that lengthy, detailed submittal was provided to the county, and it was very much tied to the State Road 4 Oakland Neighborhood Revitalization Project, yes.
And that enhanced our chances of getting the money by presenting it that way?
We believed it did. We believed sort of listening to the county commissioners, what their ideas were, where they'd really like to see dollars spent. In many regards, they wanted to see things that would go toward producing jobs, toward neighborhood revitalization, toward things of that. So by tying it all together to that improvement to the corridor as a whole, and then by some of the functional attributes of the community center, I think it really sort of speaks to some of the things that the county commission wanted to see when it comes to spending their dollars.
Okay, so the notion of a Boys and Girls Club would not have been as appealing to get the money.
I guess I don't understand that question.
It seems like this is tied up in a package of where and when and to some extent how, and it's pretty far down the road as far as good work with all this investigation. Just wondering the rationale for going into all that detail. Was that in order to make the proposal more likely to be accepted by the county? And is the county on board now? They're waiting for us, I guess.
I'm going to, in response to your question, I think anybody that has gotten used to doing grants or making asks of other jurisdictions, if you're good at it, you spend a lot of time trying to understand what that organization wants to see.
Right.
And I think we did as good a job as we possibly could trying to understand what that organization, in this case Butler County, wanted to see, and crafted a request that would be highly consistent with what would look attractive to them as to what they would want to fund.
Okay, fitting the pieces of the puzzle together.
And so I certainly won't be an apologist for that, because my goal is to get as much of other people's money as I possibly can on behalf of my employer, the City of Middletown. So, that's in large measure what we did. But at the same time, we know that we really need a quality community center. I've been in multiple communities over the years in my career, and usually cities of this size have 4 community centers, at least 3 community centers. We only have 1. And we haven't been able to invest in it that much over time. And we know there's an incredible need for youth programming. And here's an opportunity. So when we could tie all these various things together, it just seemed like the perfect storm that all came together. So that's kind of what really made this sort of thing craft itself the way it did.
Where are you coming up with the $6 million? Because I'm looking at the budget that you sent to the county, and you've got Route 4, Oakland Neighborhood, okay, and then you come to City of Middletown project commitments, and number 2 is the expansion of Sunny Hill Community Center for youth and teens at $1.6 million. Is that just the county's portion that we're asking for this particular project within the total project? There's no page numbers, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The more lengthy was the original ask of the county, and then it was amended by the second, so that with the second amendment, actually, the first one only showed $1.6 million potentially coming from both city and schools, and then it was amended to include the 2.1 and the 4 million, and then gave a little bit greater detail to it.
So what is the total capital budget for the expansion of the community center?
Would be the $12 million.
It would be the 12 million, okay.
I'd like to just take a step back and first of all say I think we do have something big to celebrate tonight, and that is the fact that our Youth's Future has brought together council and the school board, which I believe is the first time since I've been mayor that that's happened. So I'm grateful to be at the table with you guys and have this conversation and be here as a community because our youth are bringing us here, and so we really have them to thank. So I want to just put that out there and start on that because I think it's really exciting that they're the ones that have brought us together in one or another. The other thing I picked up on that I really liked and what was put out tonight was both Karen Maney and Debbie both mentioned the word family and how it's so critical. And I know we all know it's so critical to our community, but how that is a focus of something that we want to do together. Because I think what we have going on in our community is a lot of silos trying to do the same thing, trying to really help our youth in so many different ways, so many different locations, and putting a lot of effort into it and resources as well. And one thing I see happening right now is that we're trying to condense those silos and as resources as well into something great. So I can definitely appreciate that. I know one of the comments from the community will be, well, it's too far from my home, right? It's one place in the city, and at some point, if we're gonna do something big, there's gonna have to be one place in the city. I've heard the comments, well, maybe we should have them in all the different neighborhoods, little community centers, and maybe that's more effective. But I feel like that's kind of what we've been trying to do that doesn't really quite work because we're not connecting and we're silos. And so while I can appreciate the comments about people wanting community centers in their neighborhoods, I do see a big, big benefit in having one central big community center where we get these resources together and make it happen for our community. So that's definitely something I'm sure we all will hear if we do move forward with something like this. The other thing about family is, I'm looking at this motto and I love it. One thing I think could be even stronger is building a place where our family, with the big M right in the middle of it for Middletown, can thrive. And I just think that is cool because while we want our families in our own homes and under the same roof to be strong, we know that's not always realistic. And sometimes families don't have the same mother and they can be found outside of that home. And so to me, it gives me goosebumps about how I feel like this could have an impact on our community. And this is me taking a step back, away from numbers, away from, budgets. I love the idea. And I think it's something we need as a community. How we make it happen, that we're all tasked with that, and you guys are tasked with that, and we have to, if we agree, I think they're asking tonight, do we agree? And as Ms. Vittori mentioned, I think we do agree that we need something. So I just want to make sure we're not going too much into the weeds. I know the money is super, super important, and we're all very, very cognizant of that, but I want to make sure we also take that strategic step back and just say, are we all on the same page? Do we want something like this? And if so, how can we help them hone their efforts so that we put it to the scale that we want, we make the ask that we want, and we're all on the same page, and we look like we're all on the same page to Butler County, because I believe that that's kind of the whole point too, right, as we move forward trying to get those funds. So I just wanted to say that point. The other thing was Midpoint Library would probably be a great partner as well. And I'm not sure, I mean, if we're looking big scale, is that something where they want to attach themselves to the center? I don't know. I know that might sound crazy, but they have their own funding streams as well. And I know you guys are trying to create a list of partners, but they may be another one. So thank you for listening to my long-winded interjection.
I have a kind of a technical question about the timeline. This is to the city. Have you asked for the funds, or did I hear tonight that you already have some of the funds? You're going to be presenting. Suppose we were to say we'll give X amount. Has the city, have you presented a proposal to the county at this point, or what is your timeline to present to the county? How quickly do we need to move?
We did give the proposal to the county that was listed at your place tonight. So as I had mentioned earlier, we wanted to be first in line. I mean, we wanted to make certain that they knew that we had projects, that they were good projects, that they should consider ours as measured against anything else that someone else may come along with.
So in that proposal, it's, you already, I just want to understand, in that proposal, you have indicated that Middletown City Schools would support $4 million. Is that correct?
I believe we indicated that there could be support of $4 million from the schools.
Do we have any details on the sustainability piece and where you guys were thinking about the sustainability coming from? Because there's one, obviously the one piece of can we get the funds to build it, and then, of course, the bigger piece about sustainability. But I would very much be curious how, what your thoughts are on how that would happen for Middletown by other locations. I know there's no specifics you can exactly come up with, but what were your thoughts on that and how it might differ from the Boys and Girls Club? And
I think through greater partnerships and not relying on endowments and grants as much. Definitely build a center that has great capacity for rentals, partnerships. One small idea, part of this programming, part of the $4 million concept was we're going to have a preschool center in this facility to give us something on that side of town as well. While we already provide dollars to our preschool, we can divert those to part of the programming that goes on there to help with the operations. We get grant funding for that as well that goes to the Butler County ESC. They can take the dollars they're currently using and divert them there as well. So there are great opportunities like that. We just got to be creative and look into those and figure out how we can have sustaining dollars year over year.
And to that point, that I'm interested in having further conversations, but the sustainability pieces, and Jim's going to know because I've said this to him multiple times, I'm going to really harp on that because we do a disservice to our community and our city and our schools if there's not a realistic way to keep this going. I think it's feasible that we can see the dollars and see what it would take to build it, but I don't want to come back in 10 years and look over our shoulder and say, what happened? Because that would be a worst case scenario for me. So that'll be something, if this goes forward, and I hope we continue to have conversations that I'll be certainly looking at.
I don't know the true way to move forward with all this. I can tell you in terms of my general opinion to your three questions that I would support council and the leaders that are at the top of this helm to continue moving forward. I'm one member, but I would support moving forward with exploring this project.
Support building out the plan.
Yes, exploring the fine details, and I do hear my colleagues' concerns, and I have similar concerns about sustainability, but ultimately we have to start somewhere, and this is a good start point. I agree with what the mayor was saying around building families, and we need a better support system to do so. I trust our leadership that we have smart minds at the table, would be excited about the conversations that the community can share, and there's some creative people who are tasked to really do some creative things. I would trust that they would do a good job. And ultimately, there's a back out. If things do not materialize, if the money does not come, we're not tied. We're not writing checks.
an initial commitment that can change.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And so in that spirit, I would have support of moving forward and exploring what might be next.
Have there been conversations around who would be managing the property and how that might work best? Like, would the people working at the community center be City of Middletown employees?
I think there's still an awful lot to be determined on exactly how it operates, gets managed, runs over time. It is likely from an ownership perspective, it becomes a city property, but that does not mean it couldn't also then be transferred to a nonprofit, and a nonprofit set up as a purpose-built entity to manage, operate, and own this over time could be in place. So I think that's very much open. And again, we talk about form following function. I think the organization is the same way. You know, depending on where funding comes from, how it operates, where some of the revenue sources are, all that's to be determined. And I think we have to be open to it. That's why it's critically important that a lot of people that are very wise get together and talk about what sustainability looks like and find ways to assure it over time.
Thank you. I also, I like the idea of this project, and, what the mayor had mentioned about how we're not working in silos, how we have everybody at the table. That's a positive. As a school board member, I think that our entire school board, in our strategic plan, we've taken a holistic approach to education, recognizing that we have to address the mental health concerns of our students, the trauma that kids are coming to school with. We have to feed kids. We started a health center. We feed kids in the summer. So there's plenty of evidence that shows that we have supported this holistic approach to educating kids. Although I don't always feel like it is the school district's responsibility, but if it's not happening, we've stepped in and taken responsibility for the needs of our families. We have a lot of poverty in our schools. And so sitting together with council, poverty is not something that just the city is going to be able to handle. It's not something that just the schools can handle. We have to do it together, and we have to work with the community as well. But we've also lost a lot of funding as a school district to vouchers based on student achievement, because when the state looks at our schools, they've only been looking at student achievement, and that's how we get our funding. So we really, when we're looking at outcomes and measures, as a school district, I think that we really have to find a way that we can connect our outcomes for this project to student achievement. And when we talked about priorities, that's really what I said, is that we have to look at how we're impacting kids. We have to look at how this is going to impact the success of our kids coming through Middletown schools. And so when we're looking at partners as well, how far do we go as a school system to support the well-being of our kids? Is it our responsibility also to support adults? And, is that how much or what percentage of this project is going to be focused on adults and how much is focused on kids? Also, we've had to cut funding for our preschool programs, not because the preschool education doesn't support education and success in life, but because it wasn't directly connected enough to that student achievement, unfortunately. And that was a tragedy that had to happen. But now we've got money and we want to invest in these preschool programs. We need to look at how that's going to support the school district over time. Will we have membership fees for kids that are not attending Middletown schools? I think we need to look at that and options like that, so that we could also look at sustainability and raising money, outside of school funding.
And I think that's why programming that surrounds the family nucleus itself, to strengthen that, can get hopefully at some of your achievement goals within the school systems. The more we can strengthen, hopefully, that family nucleus through something like this, I would hope that we can see an improvement in our youth's achievements within the school systems to hopefully then garner, the additional support that the schools need.
Yeah, and I think identifying those outcomes is really going to help us to put our programming together. And I think that's what we need to do, is we need to look at crime and juvenile crime, because the city is going to be looking at that, right? That's something that you want to address, we need to address as a city. And then we're looking at economic development and workforce development, because we need to look at that. And we have this great strategic plan that's coming out, and our kids have to have jobs, when they come out of school. And that's something that the chamber had identified, is we're going to be producing successful graduates from Middletown. We want to keep them here in our community. So that economic development piece, it benefits our kids as well. But we need to attach student achievement and student outcomes and attach our strategic plan to this.
I just had a question I want to come back to the numbers once again. Of course, I support the project. I think we can leverage our funds. I think there's certainly ways to do that. But I want to be clear. I don't think that I would be able to support this project at $4 million. I want to challenge the city. I also was going to ask, has there been any work to reach out to maybe corporate sponsors or others to try to figure out a way to bring some money in from a different direction? Again, I've repeated this theme, but Middletown City Schools cannot go forward with another tax levy. I know that we've talked about 2 years or whatever that timeline, which, by the way, continues to shift. Okay? It continues to shift. So we don't know what that timeline is. Let's be frank about that to folks that are in the room. And then if we're really going to settle on this idea that there is consensus in this room to move forward, I mean, again, these dollars, it's not a windfall. In my judgment, we don't have the capacity to go forward for additional dollars. Every dollar counts for Middletown City Schools, and I'm going to fight for that. Because, I'm looking at buildings that are at capacity that, our mortgages went up here in Middletown to pay for the new buildings, and they're already at capacity. That doesn't set well with a lot of folks here in the community. And so as we're going through this work, again, not to diminish the project at all, I think there is an opportunity for folks in the room and for us to come together around a wonderful project, but I'm going to fight against $4 million. We got to challenge the city. If this project is so important to the city and to the future of the corridor, then we have to come together in some way, which again is for a future conversation, but I would not be willing to go $4 million at this point. Hopefully tonight we can clarify how we're going to be spending some additional ESSER funds, but if that project is as important as it's being talked about tonight, then I would challenge the city to come forward with some additional dollars for the project.
I have just a question to related. I know that we've talked a lot about our ARPA dollars and the very sort of strict guidelines there are about how those dollars are spent and what types of projects those dollars are spent on. I guess I'm a little unfamiliar about the way that the money that the school system has received is supposed to be spent. And so I wonder if you could provide some clarification just for the rest of us about exactly what that money is supposed to be spent on and how that relates to this project.
Each ESSER funding is a little different. The restrictions have changed slightly from ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. They are very restrictive on how the dollars can be spent. On ESSER 3, 20% of the dollars, this is the big caveat, have to be spent on helping the kids get caught up from the pandemic. Very broad, very broad. How do you determine what that is? Is it through adding teachers, adding counselors? Is it through smaller class sizes? Is it through after-school programming? It's really, it's not defined. So that's the challenge that, we're going to be talking about here after this meeting with our board on how we've laid out those dollars and how we certainly think, without a doubt, we're probably 80% of the funding is going towards helping our kids get caught up in one shape or another. The $4 million that we're allocating, we're working with our legal firm. Every step of the way, we do use our legal firm to give me a legal opinion to say, yep, you're spending these dollars appropriately under our requirements. And again, they've been involved in our meetings a few times as well to make sure that what the district is doing is legal and legitimate. Those are things that our board's going to see as we move forward, that we are spending the dollars accordingly. That $4 million, just to be a little more detailed about it, it's just not going to preschool. We have a lot of programming that we want to run through this community center that is in line with our strategic plan, as Michelle alluded to. That is is to the core of what we need for our kids beyond the school day. As I like to say, our kids are going to learn and not even know they're learning. That's what a community center does. The trips that I took over to Westchester and looked at their community center, dug in, it was just amazing what I saw, and the smiles on those kids. Had no idea. They didn't want to leave at the end of the day. With ESSER 3 is $26,200,000. That's a heck of a lot of money. And, to divide that on how we can spend the money, there's not enough resources out there just to hire staff to buy people, for 3 years at a time. We know that. We've bought all the extra staff we think we can with ESSER 2 and some of the ESSER 3 dollars. So that's where we sat down and talked about, I'm going to use the term legacy again. How can we spend these dollars where they're going to last in this community for decades? And, within the law, we are able to do that, to partner with other organizations to spend these dollars cooperatively.
I would like to say that I am very much in favor of going ahead with this project. I would hope also, I don't know, if the big dreams don't come true, I would hope in some way it would be even a small dream, a smaller dream. I don't think in any way the community center should be limited to Middletown students only. I think it should be people who live in the city of Middletown. I think those are the people that are to be served by this, even though Middletown puts some money into it. I've listened through all the talk about our ESSER funds, the requirements, the restrictions, that you have to be able to, whatever you put into place, you have to be able to maintain after you spend it, which limits a lot of things. I feel like we've been very strategic in using this for the best interests of the kids in the Middletown schools. And so I think that this would be a continuance of our goal. And as Michelle said, this goes in line with our new strategic plan extremely well. Plus, I think it's the right thing to do.
I think the more we show support as a united front for this, I think we're going to find community partners that want to be involved, not just in the planning, but financially. And I think that perhaps, to Mr. Moore's point, we may be able to pull back on some of that if we can get some community interest, because it will help the future workforce. I mean, for sure. There's no question it will provide a stronger workforce for our employers in the area. So I would love to see community partners get involved in this project. I think it could be incredible and just serve the community in so many ways, including their own corporations as well.
And I think to that point, announcing a project like this and the potential that it has is a great invitation to all of those community partners and all of those organizations who might want to get involved in something like this, to reach out to us, to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm supporting this. What can I do? And I think that speaks a lot to the endowment and the sustainability of the project, because those are the kind of partners that you'll need ongoing to make sure that the lights stay on. So,
I didn't
give us a
know
call.
if you took it as I was saying that we're excluding anybody, but I didn't mean it that way, if that's how it came across. I think I'd like to look at models like the Mason Community Center and other city-school partnerships. It's just, are we going to have a membership fee? And if we do, our Middletown students should get one just by virtue of them being Middletown students. Or look at something creative like that, scholarships or something, so that we can have different sources.
I think we have to be very careful when we're talking about community issues and school funding issues. I think there's a difference there. I think all the children in Middletown are members of the Middletown community, no matter what school they go to.
Yeah,
So I think we have to
absolutely.
remember that.
Yeah, and this is a community center, and even looking at the data here, I'm seeing 99.99% of kids are economically disadvantaged, which is not an accurate number. And I don't know why we keep using this number, just because 100% of our kids qualify for free and reduced lunches. That just becomes our default number, although the number is maybe closer to 70 to 80%.
In reality, yes.
In reality? Okay. So when we're looking at our demographics and who we intend to serve, I think that we have to try to be more accurate, because that will also determine some of the programming and the focus of our programming.
I think we want to make sure that everybody who has any questions still has a chance to ask, or any statements that anybody wants to make. Obviously, it's just a work session. It's the first time you've heard about it. We just wanted to make certain that we were here to answer any and all questions, and then, be able to move forward from here. So,
Mr. Palak, one question. With the thanks for the work that went into this. Are the Boys and Girls Club represented here tonight in any capacity? Any representatives from the Boys and Girls Club?
No.
Do they have a timeline for when they will sign on as a partner, or tell us that they're not signing on as a partner?
It will be us that have to sign on with them if we choose to go
okay.
that way. Yes.
I didn't realize the courtship worked that way. Good. Okay.
We courted them. Great question.
Oh, something else that I haven't asked yet is we have 2 beautiful YMCA facilities that serve our community. Have we talked to them? Are we duplicating programming that's already happening at the YMCA?
I know from my perspective, I hope that that also will be another partnership conversation we have. They do some things really, really well. They understand recreation. They understand how to manage recreation. I think they would be a really great partner, to be part of. If there's recreational things here, could they manage it? Could they operate it? Might they be involved in designing it? Again, I think some of these questions are yet to be answered, but because they are such a great community partner and we don't want to duplicate what they do, we want to enhance it and complement it, that they really need to be at the table, without question.
And yes, Michelle, they have been to a meeting. Their director has come to a meeting, so they are involved. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just one last question to Mr. Bertram. You just mentioned about the Boys and Girls Club. Just to follow up on Mr. Mulligan's question, this courtship that was just referenced, what are we committing to in terms of the Boys and Girls Club? Because I'm just now hearing this again for the first time, that this relationship with Boys and Girls Club is actually coming from our side. So can you clarify those details?
Yeah, early on, we did go over to the Boys and Girls Club to see their, to visit their campus, take a look at it, get an idea what the Boys and Girls Club is and what they're about. A lot of great things happening over there. Obviously, CBI has been on this from the beginning as well, and I think, Karen, you even took the tour with us.
And we're still in early talks, so
Yeah.
we haven't gotten in the weeds. Susan and I and Randy are going to follow up with their regional person. There are some questions that we still have going into it, so I don't want to, that was why I was really clear to say we don't know that we're going down that road yet tonight.
I guess my question,
I'm not sure when that's going to be.
If I can, Todd, it wouldn't be an exclusive Boys and Girls Club. If Boys and Girls Club, if we decided, yeah, we want them to be a part of the community center, they could be just that, a part of it. It wouldn't be the Boys and Girls Club of Middletown.
I guess what I'm asking, does that require us to have a contract in any way from Middletown City School District with Boys and Girls Club, or is that going to be set up through an entity with the center itself?
It'd be through the community center.
Yeah, that would be through the community center. They would be like a tenant.
I think we're all very cognizant of making sure that we put the right relationships and the right partners in this facility so that we get the services that our children need to, and our families need to thrive, but also making sure that we're putting in facilities that are cooperative together and working together. And we have visited with Boys and Girls Club to the extent that we wanted to see if that was a potential and have those ongoing conversations. But that would be part of those conversations we go forward today to say, is this a partnership that works for everyone, and what are the specifics of how that looks, and making sure that we can bring you those answers before we would recommend that as a final partner.
And I'll say the Boys and Girls Club has been very kind to us. They've come to our meetings, they've been very helpful, they've been listening, and they have put no pressure on us whatsoever, none. It's not like they're trying to get us to join for the numbers. It's been very cordial, so just know that they've been a big help so far.
That partnership, is it more like Boys and Girls Clubs provide programming, we provide space? Is that kind of the
I think that's
how
some
that
of the
works?
details we would want to make sure we understand in a contract. So the idea is
But I mean, high level, I guess, is that how that in general that kind of works? Or
They have many different models.
Okay.
Let's just say,
Okay.
yeah, what they say is we'll work with you. If you want to work with us, we'll do it any way you want us to. So, yeah.
I would recommend also that we choose partners based on the outcomes that we want to achieve. So if we want to achieve certain outcomes, then we look for the best practices and who's achieving those outcomes, and we invite them. And I hope we don't have to exclude anybody because we really do want the community on board and in support, but we really have an obligation to our community and to our children to do a very good job with this.
So we came together tonight to share the plan. We were looking for support. I think what I'm hearing in the room is we do have support, and we all agree that this is a great idea for our community, that it supports a lot of the vision and the mission that we have going in both of our organizations. Also, yes, it is a celebration, Nicole, that we've both come together, both teams have come together to work on such a project. So the support of actual planning. So actually going to soliciting the partners, starting to sit down and put together a plan, and then coming back to share. So, you know, it may look different with the financial pieces, but overall, it is a dynamite idea to support our community. So it sounds like we hear support for expanding the Sunny Hill Community Center and starting to get those partnerships at the table, right? Is that a head nod? Do we have head
Yeah,
nods?
it's a head
We have
nod,
head
yes.
nods, okay. So I also want to take the opportunity to just say thank you for coming out this evening, for both sides to sit down and talk together and form this partnership. Hopefully this is the beginning of something new, and we can build upon this, whether it's a community center or another project that we have going on for our community. So with that being said, are we, Jim, you have anything you'd like to wrap up?
Just want to also say thank you very much to school board members, to city council for coming together tonight to share, to learn. We have some really exciting opportunities in front of us. This is the very beginning of a long journey, not the end. So it's an exciting one, though. I think I'm really optimistic about the future of this community, and in large measure, I am so because of all these partnerships that are starting to come together and really believe in the future of this community. So this is just another example of that. I think there's nothing but good that's going to come out of this. No matter what the final outcome is or what the numbers become or what we decide, there's going to be a really good project that comes out of this, and I'm absolutely convinced of that. So thank you all for being here and participating and for what you'll do as we move forward.
With that, I think it's, my treasurer gave me a look, and so I think it's on me to kind of go from here. Again, to echo what the city manager said, it's fun sitting next to some new friends, neighbors, and others, and to have a conversation like this is a celebration and is exciting. And with that, is there a motion for adjournment from the city school board?
So moved.
And a
Second.
Mr. Bertram?
I think was that Michelle?
Yeah.
Motion? And the second came from Anita. Thank you. Working two sides of the room is a little more difficult with my bad hearing. So. All right. There we go. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Scheibert?
Yes.
Ms. Novak?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes. Now charge the mayor if you want to know your protocols.
Well, we don't have that protocol.
So I'll entertain I'll accept a motion for adjournment from city council.
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Vittori,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
All right, do we have the thing?
We can do it simultaneously.
You got it.
Great, yeah, ready?
We'll take about Bertram, would you mind calling the roll, please?
I sure will. Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Here.
Ms. Novak?
Here.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Here.
Dr. Urso?
Here. Since we have done the Pledge of Allegiance for our earlier meeting, we'll move right to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Bertram, any questions or concerns with tonight's agenda? Forever hold your peace. There you go.
All right. Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
Ms. Novak?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
At this moment, we do have Mr. Thomas Falk, who would like to speak to the board regarding the elementary school mask policy. I'd like to welcome Mr. Falk. Would you mind passing that down to Randy?
Good evening. My name is Thomas Falk. I'm a parent of a first grade student here in Middletown City Schools. Thanks to everyone who's responded to my comments and questions and just, listened to my thoughts and concerns on this. I'm looking into the administrative office across the hall here, and I'm seeing on the screen a sign that says masks required. I'm just asking that you shift those over to the elementary schools for the upcoming year. My purpose is to ask that you require masks to be worn in schools in the district that serve students who are ineligible to receive COVID vaccines. And my reasoning for this is that shortly after your last meeting, the Centers for Disease Control announced that all students should wear masks in the fall. Then on Friday at the governor's press conference, a reporter asked Dr. Bruce Vanderhoff, who was the chief medical officer for the Ohio Department of Health, a pointed question: is it safe for students to attend school this fall without masks? His response was that this is not a benign disease and children are not immune to it. He is seeing across the country and in Ohio rising numbers of sometimes very young, otherwise healthy children suffering severe COVID symptoms and long hospitalizations. Dr. Vanderhoff reiterated that masks are our most potent tool for combating the spread of disease in our schools. So, in a word, he answered the reporter's question: no, it is not safe for students to attend school without masks. Last year, around this time, you instituted a mask requirement in Middletown schools. I think that this was highly effective. I think that I checked, and today the average daily transmission is about 3 to 4 times higher than it was last year at this time. We have this much more highly transmissible variant. I'm expecting that classrooms will be more crowded this year with fewer students staying home. Opportunities for social distancing will be less. And so why would we surrender this most important tool that we have in our bag? Last week I learned that a young and otherwise healthy student of mine was hospitalized with severe COVID symptoms. He remains in the hospital, unable to receive visits from friends and family. And I would hate to see that to happen to any of our little ones or their families. So in my judgment, I think that Board of Education has a duty of care here, an ethical, perhaps a legal responsibility to take these reasonable measures to ensure the health and well-being of our students. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. What I can say is that this is a very fluid topic. I know daily, weekly, new information is coming out. I know our local health officials are actively involved in conversations with the school district, and I do believe at our second August meeting, this topic will be discussed. And so do appreciate your concern, your research on it, and appreciate you coming this evening and speaking with us.
Thank you.
That takes us to tonight's consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Are there any questions or concerns or highlights within the consent agenda for this evening? Is that enough silence? Is that enough? They allowed? Okay.
Plenty.
If there are none, then Mr. Bertram, I think we're ready for a vote.
Ms. Novak?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
That will take us to the curriculum and instruction portion of tonight's agenda, and a contract, a 6-year contract with Aubrey. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
In a second, please.
Second.
Any questions or dialogue regarding said contract?
Mr. Bertram, just considering that this is a substantial contract and commitment from the district, just highlight some of the areas where we are, despite the number, trying to be fiscally responsible with our ESSER funds, and how this does set us up to implement the strategic plan.
I'll be happy to discuss the funding part of this, and then I'll defer to Ms. Hauser for the strategic plan piece of that. As you know, the funding for ESSER dollars are controlled dollars that have to be used in specific ways. This certainly allows us, because of our strategic plan, to set up software that is specific solely to our students in the various areas that Debbie can get into, whereas any other type of software would be generic in nature that would not, it'd be a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. So there is a cost associated with this of $156,452 over a 6-year period, where we will pay it over 3 years. This includes $180,000 of expenses that we're currently using with Aubrey now. So you could reduce that by, it'd be a $376 additional contract that we're paying for. But all inclusive with what we use Aubrey for now, we're looking at less than $15 per student over the course of 6 years based on a 6,000 student population. So you look at it on a per student basis, I think it is very cost effective.
And again, just to come back to that number again, I asked this question. Just in disclosure, I met with Mr. Stiles on last Monday, just to get some further clarification on the contract. What we're saying here is that the $38,000 that we're currently allocating, that also rolls into this dollar amount through time, as opposed to having 2 separate contracts.
That's correct.
Yes.
It becomes one contract. Great question.
And regardless, if we were to contract, as many districts have done with Aubrey, to implement the badging system, we're still looking at roughly $100,000 regardless for their template. Is that correct? Roughly somewhere around $100,000?
Yes, that is what I heard, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Once we actually build it, correct?
Yes.
Right, so, because part of this contract is actually building that system.
Okay.
It's a unique build.
Yeah.
Other questions? Comments?
I'm ready.
Yep.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
Ms. Novak?
Yes.
That will take us to this evening's work session topics, the ESSER 3 budget discussion. I'll defer to our treasurer, Mr. Bertram, to start the dialogue.
All right. I shared with you a document with numbers on it. What other type of document would I give you? And this is a document that we have shared in the past on numerous occasions. And what it does, it highlights the expenditures for ESSER 1, which was FY21, for the CRF urban monies that we received, FY21, and the broadband connectivity dollars we received in FY21. Those monies, in all intent and purposes, have been spent out. There are a few dollars remaining in ESSER 1 that will be spent out very soon here. ESSER 2 dollars began effective July 1st we started spending them July 1st. We could have spent them sooner, but we went through our ESSER 1 first. ESSER 2 dollars of $11.7 million, rounding, is a 2-year grant. These are funds that have come before you as well, where we've talked about the use of these dollars to help pay for the $2.5 million reduction that we started taking this fiscal year, to make whole and suspend those reductions for each of the next 2 years. And then we also added staff and components. If you turn to page 2, top left, we added 23 district full-time subs for 2 years, 8 LLI tutors, 5 ESL tutors, 5.5 success liaisons, 0.8 truancy officer, 1 custodial staff, 7 K classroom assistants, 3 literary instructional assistants, literacy, third time's a charm, and ESL psych, 6 elementary counselors, city transportation for virtual students, 5 interpreters, AIM tutors, and originally 4 Clorox 360 machines, but I think we refocused on carpet cleaner to help us with the transition of those ESSER 2 dollars. Again, those are 2-year purchases, about $5.5 million each of the 2 years. And the board did give us the okay to move forward with these.
Mr. Bertram, with the changes to the school funding, will that impact any of these expenses? For example, the $2.5 million that we made in cuts, is that supposed to come from the state directly, or will it still be coming from the school district?
The fair funding has no impact on our ESSER planning. In fact, I recommend we continue using the ESSER dollars in this way to protect our general fund, which is an allowable expense.
Okay.
Okay, and that, again, will help us alleviate the future of a tax levy. Now we move into ESSER 3 funds. ESSER 3 funds, we started the conversation on March 21st, first time we brought you a projection of what we thought we could use the ESSER funds on, or what our intention was of these funds. Again, very, very high level, not much research was done at that time, just some broad thinking early on. At that time, I thought we would have approximately $22.4 million based on the projections that were coming out of additional ESSER 3 dollars after we continued the reductions and the additional staff of the ESSER 2 for 1 year. So those dollars are baked into the ESSER 3. Not that we'll need them in that 3rd year, but for the time being, they are in there. We'll evaluate and make changes as needed. We came back again on June 14th with more detail on how we wanted to spend these dollars. At that time, we talked about 4.25 in broadband cooperative initiative to find ways, maybe possibly working with the city again to get broadband throughout the community and our school buildings. We talked about $500,000 in after-school programs, again, cooperative initiatives with other agencies such as CBI and so forth. We talked about preschool building, renovating, not renovating, I'm sorry. After we looked at the ELC building, we thought it'd be more conducive for us to take those dollars based on Mr. Weezer's recommendation and maybe divert them to a new preschool center, and we talked about possibly Creekview since it was in the discussions when we were adding on to a building which ultimately became Rosa Parks. We also talked about that possibility even being central because that was a consideration as well. We talked about, this first time we discussed to you, the $4 million for the Community Center Boys and Girls Club, which would include a kindergarten center as well, not part of the $7 million. That $4 million obviously, as I mentioned earlier, isn't just for preschool sections, but it's also for after-school programming. A lot of things could be included in that $4 million to meet the strategic planning that we have in place. Pathways, something that we have yet to build. We decided to put a set-aside in there of $2.5 million. As you know, we're looking at 4 pathways over the next 3 years, I believe. Planning 2 of them this year and then 1 year thereafter. Again, not sure how much we're going to need for those ideas, but we do want a placeholder in effect to help us with those plans.
What are some of the kind of expenses involved in that? In
Deb?
the pathways?
In the pathways?
Yes.
So as we consider the new pathways that we're developing, basically it's, there are always resources, depending, we're looking at a computer science pathway. Are we going to need to actually put in a lab at the high school? Are there certain resources that we're going to need to purchase for the classrooms to support that pathway? So really it's the support system in place to develop that pathway.
Like capital expenditures, you would say?
Could be,
Could
absolutely.
could be, or classroom resources.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. We really don't know at this point.
The community center includes K center, includes kindergarten center? Is that
Yes. Yep.
What are we envisioning for that?
Well, again, it's preliminary. I think we've talked about 6 to 8 sections or school classrooms. It'd be more sections than that if it's classrooms, if they're half-day versus whole-day. And again, we don't know exactly how that's going to come to fruition, how we're going to design it. A lot comes down to, do we get county money to help us with that? Do we not get county money? What are we able to do?
Okay.
So just a point of clarification, at the new building, there would be kindergarten sections?
Yes. And that was part of the verbal agreement when we met with Jim. Originally, we talked about $2 million. Then I told Marlon, if we're looking at kindergarten centers and we're developing one on this side of town, do we want to develop one in this new building? So that's kind of where the idea came from. If we do that, then do we want to up the ante on what we're willing to contribute?
So we would have kindergarten centers at Rosa Parks and then right down the street theoretically at the new space?
We don't have any at Rosa Parks right now.
No
We
kids.
have,
Preschool.
or not kindergarten, it's preschool.
It would be preschool in that,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And
Typo.
so-
Okay, thank
yeah.
you.
All right, that
was
settles
like,
that.
Oh, when did we decide to do a whole kindergarten?
Yeah,
center?
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pre-K, K.
Yeah.
So we're looking at doing preschool then, as we discussed previously at Creekview or at Central because of the building plans that we had already looked at. Those were good fits. And also at the new community center.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And part of the thinking there too, the state and Washington has been talking a lot about universal preschool, which would mean 4-year-olds, I believe. So we want to be prepared. If that does come to fruition, we don't want to be scrambling. Will we have the space to take care of that when or if it does happen down the road? Having the space already predetermined at one of our buildings, of course, we have flexibility to do more than preschool with it if it doesn't come to fruition. Same with the community center. So it does give us flexibility.
Mr. Bertram, just a general question in regards to tonight.
Yes.
Just so we're all clear, I know tonight's a discussion. What's the objective essentially? Is it to give informal approval to these items? Is it to, just talk about them and then come back at some later point? And so as an administrative team, what do you hope to walk out of here with?
Well, August 20th, short application window, we have a huge document that we have to complete on how we're going to spend the ESSER $3. This is the starting point. As I mentioned earlier, we're not locked on spending these in these categories. We could certainly discuss and change our mind as we go through the 3-year process of spending these dollars and move them to the areas where we deem more necessary or move them out of areas that we deem unnecessary.
So just a general question. It kind of goes to what Mr. Moore was saying earlier around space at the middle school. Is there truly it's just kind of vetting some of the different ideas and prioritizing, we as a district, what kinds of things we need to move on or not. I know previous years, yeah, there was a definite crunch in terms of space at the middle school. I thought virtual learning in some ways eased some of that tension.
Yeah.
Do we look long-term at having an issue with having enough space at any of our buildings, predominantly the middle school?
We just got some early data from Gail today showing us what our building counts are. We're sitting just over 1,000 at the middle school, and I want to say 1,600 or 1,700 at the high school. I had about 2 minutes to scan the multiple-page document. As far as the elementaries, I don't see any space issues in any of those currently.
What's the capacity at the middle and high school? We're at 1,000 and 1,600.
I think we were at 1,200, and we felt capacity at 12.
Right. That's when we felt like we had to bring in
Like
the mobile
capacity
units.
was built
Yes.
for like 800 or 900.
850, and
Yeah.
I think we were over 1,200 when we were bulging at the seams, which brought in the modulars.
Okay. And what is the number now?
1,000, just over 1,000.
Okay.
Now, it's still early. In those counts are kids that are never coming to our school that have to come off the counts, and kids still coming in that we don't know about.
So would you still consider us having a space issue at the middle school?
I would not at this point. Not to say it can't happen, certainly. We don't know what's going to happen this year. This is a mysterious year coming off COVID and the concerns that we had. Again,
Are there any projections because I know the buildings were built using projections, and that's where those projections weren't highly accurate based upon what we've found. Are there anything that we as a board can base any decisions on to know?
We were growing at about 50 per year at my first 5 years, 6 years here. Of course, COVID, it went backwards. We were 5,800, I think we ended the year with this past year. We're up to 6,000 now, so we're getting kids back. We know kindergarten parents, a lot of them didn't enroll their kids last year. They just said, we'll hold off, we'll wait a year, bring them back next year when it's safer. So we're getting a lot of those kids in, although we're not seeing great preschool numbers because of the voucher system. So it's kind of offsetting, one's offsetting the other. I'm hoping we can hit 6,200 again this year to start showing numbers. Unless they're all packed at the secondary level, I don't see a building issue.
Okay.
Early on, it's early.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think the building projects were based on projections, though they were based on actuals, which was the problem, that the state wouldn't fund projections. They would only fund the actuals.
Yeah, they had projections as part of the study, but they would only fund the amount of students at that time.
And we're still over capacity if we didn't have the modulars in the middle school.
Is that true?
If we didn't have the modulars at the middle school, we would be above capacity for the building.
It's 850, I think, is the capacity.
What's our class size at the middle school, average class size in the classroom?
Probably around 25.
Okay,
Yeah,
what's our
little less.
average class size in our elementary buildings? Let me be more specific. If we were looking at Creekview and Wildwood, which was part of our larger conversation for building at Rosa Parks, was to reduce class size. What is our projections there? What is our class sizes there?
Well, it depends on the class, right, at each building.
Grade levels.
Right, the grade levels. So I would say we always go for that 25 number. Contract allows 27 in the younger grades and 30 in the older grades, but right now we're looking, our ideal is right around 25. So we have, like at Wildwood, we have pockets. I know our second and third grade are high. We have high numbers in those grades. And if you remember, we're working with Wildwood, and we're, when we reach those high numbers, we have Rosa Parks, right, for those students. Creekview, the number, once again, pockets depending upon the grades. Some grades are low. Our fourth grade, we have high number, 25, 26. So.
I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, and this goes back to our original conversation earlier, lots of ideas that we've put together on how to spend these dollars. But again, I'm thinking about this in terms of what is going to have the greatest academic impact on Middletown City Schools. We're not going to have an opportunity to go to taxpayers again here in the city considering that we're going to have a fire levy here soon, this year. We're asking for taxes there. We've already had all the other increases. Folks they're tapped out. They're not going to give any more money. So as I'm looking at this from my perspective, not as windfall, not as a wish list. I'm looking at this as an opportunity to solve underlying issues within this district. And I think that's where we haven't, as a board, actually really talked about this enough. I mean, it's one thing to say, let's have a brainstorming session and let's figure out how to spend $26 million, which we don't have anymore. I mean, what I'm seeing here is where are we at now? What, 19? Okay.
Well, no, it's 26.2. And
26
then with-
minus, in two categories, we've already spent $1 million. $345,000 for 5 people to come into the district, success liaisons, despite their work, $500,000 contract, and then we're looking at, again, I'm trying to place this in a broader context. You know, we're not going to get more money. What can we do at this point to have a conversation different from what I see on this chart? That looks at the underlying challenges in this district. I mean, I believe we're at capacity and beyond at the middle school. We're not talking about that. Now all of a sudden everything's okay. But we were talking before about a tax levy. Now we got the Fair Funding Act. Don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. We don't know if it's going to be okay. That's a fact. We don't know if it's going to be okay. And then when we also look at where we have these dollars and we say, what can we do to think about the most significant, what can we do that's significant, that's going to have a lasting impact? We've talked about the community center. I think we've all walked out and said, okay, there may be some flexibility for us to do something significant there. Now what? Because I look at this, there's issues that, I don't want to call anything out here in particular, but you know, these are items that somehow got onto this list, made their way onto this list, that we as a board did not really sit and ask the question, what is our most significant, or what is the most significant risk to Middletown City Schools over the next 5 to 7 years? What's our biggest challenge?
I guess, Todd, my question back would be, would we know those things?
Well,
I think
I would
that's
hope that we would. We run for seats.
Can I finish, please? And so with that being said, I trust our leadership to be able to identify some of the things that within our district that need attention. Of course, we're empowered to ask questions, vet those ideas, and I think that's what those questions tonight is, to look at enrollments at the middle school, at the high school, at the elementary school, to probe those questions. But ultimately, our core responsibility is to hire and evaluate leadership and to charge them to bring us ideas and then to have us ask questions on them.
Our role on the board is not to just say, hey, we're going to turn everything over and let's see what happens.
I'm not saying that.
I mean, we have a responsibility to ask the policy question, what is the significant challenge facing this district over the next 5 to 7 years? I don't think that we've done that very well. That's my point. We started off on this journey with looking at funding and saying, okay, here we've got all this money. What are we going to do with it? But I don't think that we've had, other than 2 or 3 conversations about how we look at these dollars. I've raised the middle school before. It fell on deaf ears. No one really cared about what I said. And then here we are into a whole wish list of items. All I'm asking us to do, and I understand what you're saying, Chris, I do. I'm trying to be respectful. I'm just asking us to step back and say, is this really the future? Is this really what we should be spending our money on? I mean, the $500,000 that we supported tonight, that's 6 years of doing a significant project. I was a little reluctant casting that vote, but I see its impact. I went ahead and went all in, okay? But now it gets a little trickier for me because I don't see us having the ability to look at reducing class sizes and asking for future dollars. I don't see that happening. I think when you ask a district that has 30 kids in a classroom, hey, good luck, I hope you have a fantastic year this year, I think we're setting our teachers up to fail. That's my personal view. No matter what program we put in place, no matter how much money we spend on the community center, the academic performance is our #1 objective. That's what we, as a board, should be focused on. And the conversation, in my view, needs to shift. Not what do we want to spend money on, but how do we address the underlying issue in our district. I think one of those issues is class size. And we have an opportunity right here to take a deep breath and say, okay, what do we do next? All I'm asking is for the board to consider that. Consider that request. What is our challenge?
I just feel like I've been lectured on the finer points of education. But
Well, I don't think you should feel lectured. I feel passionate about
But-
this
Todd,
issue.
can
It's
I
not a
speak?
lecture. It's not a lecture. I'm passionate about this because
Todd, I'm just
this is
saying that I
we're not
think
going to
that-
get this opportunity again, and we're going to miss the opportunity to solve a significant problem.
Okay, as an educator, what I know is statistics show that class size is not the main contributor of success for a child. But what I do know also is the attention that they get to issues that happen before they get in the classroom and when they go home is a significant issue. Therefore, we have these success liaisons, which as a person not in school, you can't possibly, and a person whose family probably does not need this kind of assistance, you can't possibly understand that.
You know what? I don't need to be lectured on poverty. I certainly don't need to be.
Well, I
Because
don't think we
can
should
tell
be
you,
lecturing. I don't
I
think we
grew
should-
up here in Middletown. I've got some skin in that game, okay? I will not be lectured on what the needs of a child in this district is going to be, since we're
then-
talking about being lectured.
Okay, then-
Again, let me say this. I'm not trying to lecture anyone. I'm not trying to lecture anyone. I'm asking us to consider whether this is the best use of funds. That's the question.
I believe it is.
And I think I think one of the questions that was asked is, what is our objective tonight? It wasn't something that was intending to kind of go down roads. We have an opportunity, a great opportunity right now to figure out some solutions to some problems. And like you, I want to figure out the best solutions to those problems, not just some random assortment of just things to do.
So a
But
random assortment is
please,
$175,000
You're very
for
good at
your
just
program.
interrupting
So,
everybody
you know,
tonight.
random assortment is a bunch of items on here that we as a board, somehow this gets on the agenda. I certainly didn't ask for the Future Center.
Todd,
Nor did I.
you're being very accusatory, but this is a conversation, and I think you have a lot of good points.
I'm
was
not being
what I was trying to
accusatory,
say.
Michelle. I'm just tired. I'm
Excuse
tired
me.
of being the only one who's asking this question.
But you're not. Wasn't I the one at the last meeting that said, prioritize this for us in order of how it's going to impact kids? Now, I don't know if it's been prioritized that way, but that's what I asked for at the last meeting. So you're not alone. We're a team. There's 5 of us here, and we're having a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Let's ask our questions and not jump into, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen. Let's just ask our questions. How are these going to impact student achievement?
Are you asking me?
No, that's a good question. So can our administration
I think I've
answer
raised
that?
the question. You know, I don't think that there's any real commitment to ask that question, Michelle, honestly. I think at this point, we've got a wish list of items here, and this is where we're at again. We're going to miss an opportunity, which really pains me beyond anything I can say publicly. I just feel that here we are with an opportunity.
So what would be your list, Todd?
My list is for us to actually have a conversation about what.
No, what is your list?
My list, well, number one, I would like to see reduced class sizes. I
How
would like
will
to see
reduced
us
class
build, I
sizes
would like to
impact
see us
student
build a
achievement?
significant addition at Creekview to reduce class sizes at Wildwood and at Creekview, or what's the 2 schools? I'm losing my train of thought here.
It was Rosa, but won't be now.
Well,
Look, the
we've
point
already-
I'm trying to make is I'm trying to say, you know, we spent $10 million at Rosa, okay? I don't know what the capacity is there. I don't think we hit our mark, okay? But we do have a site that's ready to be built that could significantly reduce class sizes long-term in this district. And maybe, just maybe, set it up for the teacher in that room to have the ability to manage a class size that's smaller. I don't think that we should waste that opportunity.
I will make a comment here, Mr. Moore, that we do pay attention to class size very, very closely. That's one of my roles as you know, the previous HR director. And I do know with Rosa Parks opening up, we do have the room to actually consider class size, you know, from this point forward. We are aware of what our teachers face each day, you know, with large classes. And we've made a commitment to actually decrease those class sizes. Also, we've also made a commitment to produce or provide extra supports with the classroom. So rest assured, and I'd be glad to sit down with you and actually talk to you about how we focused in on reducing class size. And we do still have room at Rosa Parks. You're right, you're correct there. But it is important to us.
Is it possible to go through each of these line items and find out which ones, ask any questions regarding these for further clarification, see if in general there is board approval for each of these items, or if there's confusion or a lack of clarity, to just chronologically go through each as a board and say whether or not it's something that we feel comfortable with moving forward with? To have some structure to this?
Well, it's a very different conversation than the question I just raised. Again, we're going to say whether we like certain items. I mean, I would ask the question differently. I mean, as the board, is the board comfortable with spending in a piecemeal fashion, the way that we've laid out the numbers here, or do you believe that there are other risks that we should be taking into consideration?
This is me speaking. I trust my superintendent. I trust my treasurer. I think we hired really fine people to lead our district. I trust our assistant superintendent, who is at the table every day trying to solve these problems. As an educator, I listen with an educator's ear, and what I hear and the basis on which these things are coming to wouldn't be identical to maybe but they are intently in the room every day, in our classrooms every day. I think they have a good picture on what they created a better list than what I could derive on my own. And so my humble opinion would be going through and trusting the folks that we've hired.
The process we went through to come up with this list, we spent many hours on it. Every Monday morning, we spent 2 of the 3 hours that we spend together working on this. We had other meetings on top of that.
But Mr. Bertram, the 2 or 3 hours that you're referencing is the same as what we just had in this project in front of us. Where was the board involved in that? Because again, when the train has already left the tracks, and then we come back and circle back around and say, hey, what do you guys want to support? You know, if we're going to be a policy-making body as a Board of Education, I mean, it's kind of important to understand before we get so far down into something that it's hard to reverse course. You know, I see that as a strategic move on the district's part, and frankly, I'm a little tired of it, okay? I mean, you're gonna have to, you know, you take a project, you get it almost near to completion, and you ask us for the money. You know, I mean, come on. Again, put this in a broader context. I'm just questioning whether or not this is where we need to be.
I appreciate you going through the process there, Randy, if you could continue.
I'll be happy to if I'm not interrupted. The process was with the entire cabinet, week after week after week, going through this, whiteboarding ideas, coming back. We had deep conversations on every of these issues. They were all priorities. Not everything made the list. There were a lot of things on there that we shot up, brainstorming, that didn't become a priority. You know, I don't want you to think that we just tossed our wish list up because this is Marlon's pet project, this is Randy's pet project, this is Debbie's pet project. Students came first in every one of these decisions that we were making.
Now, our role as a board, as I see it, is we hire experts to lead our district who can bring in effective leaders into our district, great administrators, and we have attracted a lot of talent to Middletown because of who we have leading our district. Now, we evaluate the results of their efforts. So we identify those goals. This is what we want to see, but we don't identify the how. You know, we say this is what we want for our kids, and it's really up to the experts that we hire and that we evaluate to reach those goals using the methods that they think would be the best approach to do that. So I don't doubt that each one of these goals are based on our administrators trying to reach their goals, their performance goals, and do well.
Also, to take that a step further, you know, at the same time we're talking about ESSER funds, we're also our strategic vision, right? So we're doing that work hand in hand. So actually with the ESSER funds coming through, that allows us to actually put some teeth into our strategic vision. So a lot of what you see in this ESSER list supports the work that we're going to be getting ready to do in the next 6 years.
Now, I would like to follow Chris's suggestion and go through each line item and just have discussions on each piece and just ask questions and see how we feel about each one, if that's something that we want to continue to include or not. And then maybe at the end, if there's other ideas, which I already feel like we have been asked at meetings, do you have any other ideas? Do you want to include anything else? And we have given feedback. I think that's where the Aubrey program came from, was let's have a dashboard to build efficiencies and like long-term efficiencies. We identified we're looking for investments. We want something we can invest in.
Can you
now.
make that same argument in the context of a tax levy that we might have to have down the road when this is all said and done?
Sorry, Randy, when did you project that we're going to be having a tax levy?
I haven't been able to reproject because I don't have the fair funding numbers, but it significantly helps us.
Okay, and we did talk about a kind of a break-even analysis, if that would even be possible for the Aubrey, because we're building efficiencies into the system, which will save a lot of time and resources within our administrative resources or staff.
At the end, if we can go line by line. I have no qualms with that. We'll answer the best we can on any of these. But at the end of the day, I need charging orders on how to spend the $19 million that we have here. So if you cut one item out, then where are we going to move those dollars?
Absolutely.
Not having Mr. Stiles here makes that a little difficult too, but we can go with it. Like I said, it's a fluid document. We can make changes.
And we don't have to go chronological, or
after the fact.
there are ones that, as board members, we have probing questions about. I know this isn't a new list. I know this was something that I know I was privy to months ago, and have had opportunities to ask questions about. I just was trying to figure out a structure instead of having just fluid, angry dialogue, having some structure within what we're talking about.
Can you
Just
first
let me
identify
respond to
which
that. This
ones
is
we're
not
committed
angry
to already?
dialogue, guys. It's not angry
I'm trying to
dialogue.
talk. Can you identify which ones have been already committed to? Are we committed to the broadband cooperative right now? And I know we just voted on Aubrey.
No, the broadband cooperative, right now, we're doing the Amanda project. We believe we have enough grant dollars to take care of that project.
Yeah.
But if that's successful, this gives us additional dollars to do this in other areas of the city where it'd be more efficient for our students when they work from home.
Right, and then to expand upon that also, the Emergency Connectivity Fund of $7.1 billion, those dollars were released to school districts here, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we did actually submit a grant for 2.1 to 2.4 million dollars, right? So the money from that grant would allow us to actually contract out with hotspots. So our contract for the hotspots, we're up at the end of this school year, right? So we have 1 year left on this contract, and this would allow us 2 more years with hotspots, which then in return would provide us time to actually build out a solid broadband plan for our district, instead of having that look at us right now, to address those issues immediately. So it would allow 3 years to build out a solid plan. So we're waiting to hear back on those grant dollars from the Emergency Connectivity Fund.
I had a question just in terms of the format of this document. And so March 2021, that's the first iteration of proposals, and then that transferred to June, and then now into July. I guess the question would be
July and now August.
August 9th,
Yeah.
of course. And so from that first iteration in March of 21, the maintenance items listed there are no longer being considered.
No.
The air filtration improvements, the indoor air quality improvements, and the HVAC chillers and boiler improvements. Have those been eliminated from
Not totally.
consideration?
If you look on the other line, we do have placeholders for the maintenance items. And I just say placeholders because when we got done with our initiatives on Best for Students, there were leftover dollars. Knowing that we could save the general fund, we plugged those dollars into those maintenance items. It actually saved the PI fund more than it would the general fund, but the PI fund then,
So
we have more flexibility with
just
that.
for clarity reasons, I know you're accounting, you have strategic accounting kind of responsibilities to kind of pull money from different pools of money that helps us.
Yes.
So those three things listed there that aren't seen in June or in July, August, are those still things that we would be doing? It's just coming from different pools of capital, or not? Just from, and then if I go up to renovate or addition to existing ELC, I know that we've kind of reconsidered that conversation because that building has been deemed a little bit sketchy in terms of if it's worth the investment.
Correct.
And so that money has been pushed elsewhere. Can you go through that maintenance piece just a little bit for clarity reasons?
Yeah, just with the maintenance, it's simple. I mean, as we plug all the other numbers that we had in there, at the end, I had another $1.5 million unallocated. So we thought, well, that's a way we can use those dollars, because these maintenance items are allowed, the specific items I have listed, not every
Okay.
maintenance item. You know, general repairs, things like that, they have to be things that help the filtration system, clean air, those types of opportunities. That we get down to the third year and we haven't spent our dollars yet on other issues, we can plug them in there.
So my question's really driven at the last one there. $3.9 million is the largest sum by far.
That was in March.
That was in March, of course. But at some point, we're going to need to replace those items on those buildings.
That's correct.
And to be able to utilize our current dollars is also understanding that $4 million happens to be that number that we were discussing earlier. That's where I'm just trying to figure out that piece.
Well, no, that didn't plug up there because I said, let's do away with the chillers. What happened there is when we talked about the chillers, some of them won't need replaced for 5, 6, 7 years.
So they
We can't
still
see
have life.
spending the dollars before the end of life on some of those chillers. I can tell you there are 2 chillers that probably will need replaced in a year or 2. So, yeah, we'd want to use ESSER dollars unless it's allocated elsewhere to replace those.
Oh, is that the chillers at Amanda that you kept there, the 200,000? That's under the third column?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the chillers. Yeah, I forget where the other one is. That one's going to need replaced probably this year. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe move
You know, I could move
some
that.
of the money for the chillers, like add to it whatever we need to replace within the 3-year period.
Well, we only think 2 will need replaced in those
Okay.
3 years.
So that might be 400,000
Yeah.
instead of 200,000?
Yes. But, you know, the line above it is still maintenance items. So I could pull another chiller out of that, reduce it to 1.3.
Oh, okay.
And change that to 4. I just knew that
Yeah, I
chiller's
didn't
coming
see
up,
that.
so I went ahead and created the line item for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
that's-
have that catch-all of
Yes.
$1,542,000?
And, you know, if the board feels there's, you know, an addition is important, as Todd's, I think that's what you're suggesting, Todd, at the middle school. Yeah, that's something that I think can be discussed, and not that it has to be decided tonight. It could be part of our work sessions that we discuss those things. I think it'd be prudent for us to see where enrollment comes in this year, because there is going to be a lot of shifting in enrollment. Right now, it looks like it's coming in pretty strong. I'll say that. I've never seen more kids enrolling so far this year as any other year I've been here. It has been heavy. So it very well could become an issue. Yeah.
I see the $7 million allocated towards the new preschool building. How is that number determined? Because I know the scale of the Rosa Parks project. I understand that the costs having appreciated some in terms of building. Is that
We asked Tom. We said, if we put this many classrooms in a basic building, what's your estimate on the cost of that? And he came up $7 million. So it's not real scientific, but it's a guesstimation, yeah.
Now, are we looking at replacing the rooms at the current early learning center? Is that how we got the number of classrooms that we want for a preschool center?
We could vacate the building altogether.
We could vacate the building,
Yeah,
and that's just with the Creek View, or is that between the community center and?
Right now, the planning would be 2 centers, 2 preschool centers, one at the community center and then one at Creekview or wherever we land on.
And both would replace the one building?
Yeah, and then, you know, we could look at the LC as maybe moving offices there and getting out of the city building.
Okay. I do feel like that's
just
a lot, considering, you know, the
Yeah.
Rosa Parks project was, what, $9 million?
Just over.
Just over $9 million. So, you know, if we want to look at a permanent fix for our space issue at the middle school, you know, it would cost about that amount.
Depends on the amount of classrooms.
So-
Space too, I mean, that's the other requirement. We kind of pack that building in, but not to say it can't be added on. I think it's designed that we could add on to the back of the building where those temporary buildings are, but, yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple of really basic questions. This, where it says for facilities, the $20,568,842.
Yeah.
Now, why is after-school programs and extended learning, why is that in that for facilities?
Well, that was just a placeholder. I just put it up there for the remaining dollars that are left because we didn't have any dollars in that block. Once we agree on, yep, Randy, let's move forward, I'll have to take these, well, it's now 19.754. I changed it on the bottom one with more detail. I didn't change the top one. The allocation I took a look at today, and it was reduced because of our enrollment dropping over the last year or two with the data that they used. But obviously, where we have salaries and benefits, those dollars, that 19.7 is going to be spread out throughout the grid as required.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now then.
It's just a placeholder on
and
that grid.
Where the purchases are on the left-hand column, or left-hand side of that sheet, there are costs with some of the things, but not others.
I think those were just notes I was taking at the time when we were discussing them. You know, obviously, we've come in, we've tightened those up to know what those costs are going to be. Yeah.
Oh, so.
They're just notes.
We don't know what those totals are then, because.
I've got them somewhere, obviously, to plug them in. I worked with curriculum to Debbie and I to actually have good hard numbers to pack in there. Yeah.
It looks to me like I would have a question about, and not in any kind of, you know, threatening or accusatory mode, but on the first two lines of the front sheet, out of the 42 million, why would it cost $5 billion for governance and administration?
That has to do with some of the reductions that we made. I'll have to pull the detail out on that, Kathy. We didn't add any staff, so it's not that. Do you remember, Dan? I mean, we've been through these numbers up and down, but yeah, I think I'd have to look at that, see what we did there.
Then I have to chuckle at $495 in the big scheme, and $76.57.
Yeah. The salaries were only $495.69 that we needed, because we had so much Title I and Title II dollars to use. So this was just used for, I think, 1 or 2 employees through these ESSER dollars to do some PD. Yeah.
Do we have an administrative allowance or an overhead allowance for any of these grants to administer them or anything
No.
like that? Okay.
No, we don't charge back an administrative fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is kind of just a general question. Maybe there's not an answer to it, but if you were going to look at the total amount and then kind of look at those expenditures and tie them to student growth and student learning, the only items that I see, and maybe I could be challenged, is the maintenance items aren't directly tied to student learning experiences and student growth opportunities. And so a vast majority of that total sum would be linked to direct impact on our young people. And of course, they need to have heat and air conditioning too, I guess, too. But the majority of these dollars are kid-related, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
They are. As you can see, we're well beyond the 20% that's required to help kids catch up from learning loss during the pandemic.
And there are some school districts too that have measures for their maintenance and air quality and cleanliness of their schools because it does impact attendance.
Through audits. Mm-hmm.
I guess my one question would be the further exploration of our enrollments at the middle school and just understanding where we are now, where we forecast long-term, and understanding do we have the budgetary power within this to really have an impact there. Because if you recall in this room, I'm not a huge fan of those pods. Never
Right.
have been, never will be. And I don't see those as a long-term solution. And so if we can understand what that's looking like, and if we have a possibility to remedy that solution, I do think over time Rosa Parks will help with our enrollments at the elementary age. I'm not entirely confident that the middle school has been solved.
Sure, we can pull those numbers together. You know, we have quite a few different pieces of the puzzle this year when it comes to looking at enrollment, but be glad to pull those numbers together.
And I guess the last question I would have, I understand the need for our kids to be connected, the Broadband Cooperative Initiative. I guess, with the other projects, you see the long term. You're going to see a building. You're going to see a space. We're going to be able to benefit from those spaces for decades, hopefully. The broadband piece, again, is more fluid. It's for our kids now, and I appreciate that and understand the need for that. Just would like to understand better what that is. Are there other solutions? I know we had the governor in our district not too long ago. That's a large allotment of dollars, $3.3 million. That could crack some of the issues.
That's reducing as we move forward.
Correct.
Kind of paying Rob Peter pay Paul.
Yeah.
That initial allocation was large because we were thinking the fiber option that's available now on blacktopping could be a solution. I don't know. It seems to be dropping as a solution as we move forward.
Correct.
But that's where we came up with the cooperative idea with the city, if that's something we can work with the city to have done, but it's not on their radar.
It didn't seem like a high priority for them.
No.
But still yet, I mean, $3.3 million, that's a big sum.
It is.
And to see if there's maybe something, I guess, longer term in regards to its impact to Middletown and our students would just be my suggestion.
Yeah.
I would agree, thinking about that, if we're able to get that $2 million or funding from someplace else, I don't know if we should pursue that short-term option of hotspots because we are hoping to have kids in the buildings and to keep kids in the buildings. So, I mean, I don't know, how do you perceive the issue and
To
for
talk
the
about that
hotspots,
is.
do you think that that's
They
necessary?
need them for the after-school learning that they do. In school, we're okay. If they're taking their devices home, what good are the devices if they can't connect? So it's a connectivity issue for.
I also see that as short-term. You know, the hot spots are short-term, and if we do receive this $2.5 million from the Emergency Connectivity Fund,
Yeah.
just think about 3 years out. Think about the technology that we have right now. I mean, it's changing every day, so that time frame allows us to actually plan with the times, and we could have something that's more substantial and would be sustained.
See, my brain goes to what long-term piece is here, and that's the one piece that on the list. I see the pathways, I see Aubrey, I see improving the facilities, just understanding that technology piece and just it seems very temporary, and would like to see those dollars have a long-term impact.
I just have one other request. As we're talking about the middle school, and I appreciate that there is some concern at the middle school, but looking at class sizes at Creekview and Wildwood, I'm still concerned about that at the elementary level. If we could just get to broaden the conversation a little so that we have additional options as we look at this. I share Chris's concern about the technology. I mean, again, piecing a couple of these items together, we've got a building addition fund. You know, I mean, that's really what I'm asking us to do. It wasn't an angry tirade that I was trying
No,
to
but I think it's a we, and not as an I. And not to interrupt you, I think my concern is that this frame that it's you against the world, I think it's we as a team.
That's your assumption about that. I was only trying to bring it into context. That's all I'm asking.
And we are trying to do the same thing, Mr. Moore, within the same conversation, in all due respect.
So I think that, I like what Chris said about the, looking at the middle school, and Mr. Moore had mentioned that as well. How we might be able to possibly move things around with Rosa Parks. Freeing up space at some of the other elementary schools. Do we have room for preschools in the other elementary schools, or will we? So that we might be able to still replace those classrooms at the Early Learning Center within our buildings, because I know that that's something else we talked about in the past. Yeah, is just how can we connect our preschoolers more with those schools so that they could move from Creekview Preschool into Creekview. Right. And all the other elementary schools too, to help us with our retention. Because we are putting in a very heavy investment into preschools here.
Which is all kids.
Are we going to
Not just
retain those students?
Public and private kids.
And, yeah, and it might be, I did hear that. And, how can we better connect our neighborhood kids to our neighborhood schools? And then, also possibly offer this other option at the community center of a preschool center. And maybe allocate more classrooms or more rooms at the community center for preschool.
Just, in some ways, I understand the preschool focus, okay? But it seems that we continually, year after year, come back to the same argument about preschool, and then we're left with the challenge of class size again. You know what I'm saying? That's really what's bugging me about this conversation, is that I think we can all agree that we would like to see preschool. That'd be wonderful. But then we have this longer-term problem with class size. Again, all I'm trying to do is figure out, can we put this in a broader context to have a conversation about doing something at Creekview, maybe to reduce class size. I know that was part of the conversation before, and as opposed to just focusing on preschool. I understand having preschool at Rosa and building that into the project, if that's the design. I also understand the sustainability for the project and having it aligned to that. But when I look at the district's needs, that's where I'm challenging some of the numbers here tonight.
I guess on top of that request, I know, Ms. Scheibert, you brought it up. I've heard similar research, just a little bit of the background on class size and student learning, what the experts do say on how does class size influence student growth. Is there a good number as to what's optimal at what age? I would be in support of just hearing what the most current scholars say on that.
And as we talk about finances, I agree. I'd love to see every class 20-to-1 if we could afford it. That is the quickest way to put us into levy mode, is by reducing class size, because that's a continued cost year over year. And, our teachers try. I give them credit. They'd like to see smaller classes. We have that discussion. That's the biggest concern from a financial perspective, being able to afford that.
But they do say that research shows that it has little impact on student achievement.
That's correct, right? It's the teacher that makes the difference.
Right.
Ms. Hauser, you had mentioned earlier that 25 was an ideal size. Is that based on what?
That's actually the MTA contract.
Okay.
That's a number that we generally use, but I will rest assured, we do watch class size.
Okay.
Especially this year, with all the different pieces, like I said, pieces of the puzzle. We have, we're not quite sure how many students are coming back. Yes, it seems like we have quite a few. We have Ed Choice vouchers, we have virtual, there are just so many elements this year that we're watching. Yeah. But we do also follow the union contract.
With the virtual option, are there good enrollment numbers at the middle and high school level to understand how that's offsetting our I guess, people in seats numbers at the middle and high school too.
Yeah, we are pretty much full at the middle school when it comes to virtual numbers.
Okay.
We have a waiting list for some of our programs, so yes. I mean, it's very popular.
Yeah,
People are taking advantage of the program.
thanks. Other questions, commentary?
On the broadband, is that for 1 year of broadband, those numbers, how much is that? It's like $500 per student, so it has to be for more than 1 year.
Yeah, that would cover 3 years of broadband if we need it for 3 years. We have 3 years to use that $3.3 million, but we could also not just be using it for the devices. We could be using it to build out those broadband networks like we're doing at Amanda.
I see.
Yeah.
And where would that technology be, in a year or so?
Right.
A year, 2 years?
Yeah.
Right. Well, is it the school's responsibility to make sure that all kids have internet? That's the question I always come back to, is like, where does our responsibility end and someone else needs to pick up the...
It goes into our strategic plan around
I
equity.
was just going to take her back to that.
And, I mean, if we're...
The whole child.
If we're making an argument that we're trying to provide opportunities for all kids, and some kids aren't going to be silenced by a lack of access, then, I mean, it's linked to that. I understand the nature of what you're saying. I mean, but at the same time, I think if we're standing for this idea around equity, then of course, when they leave the building and try to do homework or research or whatever the case might be, there's going to be a need there. And if they don't have access to it.
What percentage of our kids need help in getting the internet? Not everybody.
We had 800 devices, I think, out last year of the hotspots.
So 800 out of 6,000 odd students. I mean,
12%, yeah.
Is there a more cost-effective way to?
And some of those, there were more students in that, but some of them were able to use one
Of course.
hotspot for a family. Yeah.
Yeah, it just.
That also closes the gap. I mean, it really equals the playing
Yeah.
field when you send students
Well, they
home and they're
have to
able to
have
connect
access.
at home.
They have to have access, but I'm just
Right.
wondering about the cost to us, to the district.
You know, I'd equate it to, giving kids books, but not all kids. If now their learning is on a device, if all kids can't take books home, then.
Well, did the state have a program to reimburse families for their internet?
I believe so.
They were like a $50 a month reimbursement. Is that going away?
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
don't
not-
know how effective that was and how long the program lasted, but that would require them to go out and get the system and have it installed. And some families were trying on the early onset, and were getting no response through telephone calls, because you couldn't go in, get the device. You couldn't go in anywhere because everyone was shut down.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't, it was a terrible program. They advertise and make themselves look like they were helping when it
Okay.
wasn't helping.
And the hotspots are distributed directly from the schools?
Yes.
So is there any kind of summary from what we've discussed so we know, like, I guess the request could be that, could we just have a template of after this of kind of what the feedback was and then what the response might be to kind of just codify the process a little bit more clear? I think Mr. Moore, sometimes it paints a clearer picture of what we've done and where we're moving forward to. And I think for all of us, it helps us. Because again, these conversations can become kind of fluid and we don't always remember everything that was discussed in the detail of which it was discussed. But my takeaways is that the Broadband Cooperative Initiative, there is some questions regarding that cost, and I don't want to speak for everyone, so interject if need be. And then as we kind of go through, just understanding, I guess some of the clarities around numbers, the 7 million on the new school building project, if that's a good number. Were there any other pieces within the board that we want to make sure. I know the classroom sizes in middle school was a piece that we wanted some clarity on, and any kind of research that would clarify what would be the optimal number for our classes. Outside of that, are there other items, Ms. Scheibert, Ms. Mulligan, Ms. Novak, Mr. Moore, that you would charge administration to do prior to, because I know I respect Mr. Bertram's position that we are time sensitive on these things, and we can't belabor, but we also have to be diligent and make sure that we're careful, because we're going to have a lot of waste.
So Randy, you have the August 20th deadline, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's
Okay,
correct.
to actually submit this information into the system, correct?
That's correct.
And just for further clarification, once it's submitted, those dollars can be reallocated if we find that $7 million for a preschool building is that we're not going to actually proceed with the preschool building, that we can reallocate those dollars.
That's
But
correct.
the stipulation is that we have to spend those dollars within
Yeah.
3 years.
And it's no different than us having to submit our CCIP budgets for all our title programs by July 1st to be able to use them by July 1st. But we do have, the ability to go in and change those as needed. Of course, they get approved through the program, but I've never seen things get rejected if they're within that spending requirement.
So there are some capital projects and building projects here. When would you anticipate contacting architects, drawing plans, initiating actual spending money, I guess is my question. When are we going to start spending money on some of these plans?
Well, let's talk about the $4 million since we had that conversation first this evening. That $4 million, we're using our legal counsel to work us through that. There are going to have to be documents that are going to need to be drawn up for us to have the ability to spend those dollars on the city building, because it will be the city's building on their property. So you're going to see a lot of things still come back to the board for approval that are included in this before I can even start spending those dollars. Just because you say it's okay and they say, hey, let's have a meeting, let's buy binders. I can't use these dollars like that. I mean, they are very restrictive and for a purpose. Maybe a long-term lease that we agree to in that building that spends these $4 million. Not sure yet. Those are things we're working out with legal counsel. As far as, preschool and what was the other construction project that I saw in here. Eric's going to get on board before any of that begins, because Tom's not going to do it in his short interim, and Eric's going to have to carry the weight on these items if they are going to continue, as far as hiring or putting out RFPs for contractual services for architects and contractors eventually.
And we have determined that the Creekview site is, as I look at it, it looks like $7 million for a new preschool. When will we vet the different ideas on where that will be?
I think that would be part of hiring professionals to vet those once again, bring back to the board. Again, Central, Creekview, and we had Amanda on the list, I think, as well the first time, but I think we took.
Dropped Amanda.
Yeah, we dropped that. I think those are things we have to look at again,
And is that date that you gave before, that August of '24 date, is true for this, correct?
Absolutely. It would
That
have
we
to
would
be.
have to have it built, delivered, and people in that building by the
Yeah,
August of
and one of the
24.
big concerns that I have, all these dollars that are out there, we're not the only ones planning on doing these things. So
Correct.
we're competing for labor, and, sometimes the early bird gets the worm.
Yeah.
So those are always concerns, and not that I want to rush them. We definitely have to vet them out and do them correctly here, but those are concerns that people who are
Do you have a
late in the
target
game aren't
timeline?
going to be able to use them in the ways they want to.
Do you have a target date by which you would like to feel comfortable that we would?
Oh, I'd want all construction happening, I'd say by spring of next year, to give it a solid 2 years for the build
So we
and
would
the
go to
completion.
bid some point this fall, winter?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's going to happen, yeah, that'd be the timeline we would need.
But there's still lots of work to be done. before that decision to actually go out and spend that 7 million.
Absolutely, but-
Looking at numbers, looking at space, but I feel quite confident that the 7 million, so I'm going to say it one more time, Randy, we put 7 million in there, we can reallocate it if we have a different plan.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
It's
So
the
we're
same
not
as in terms
stuck.
of when we made those budgetary cuts. We made it under the pretense that it wasn't permanent. We can
Right.
go back at any point and make changes to those, just like with this.
Right.
I think that's important to know.
So, I can definitely gather the information that you requested, but Randy, how is that going to affect your work that needs to be completed?
But, I just asked for the board for consensus to go ahead and go with the plan we have here, and then I would also ask, and I want to speak to Marlon as well, that we have this dialogue a little more often, at least quarterly, maybe one next month, to include this on next month's work session with the data that you've asked us to gather. And then as we're moving forward, quarterly updates on how the ESSER dollars are being spent or not spent, and see if there's a need to reallocate or adjust any of these.
So will there be any money spent on, say, the broadband cooperative initiative between now and the next time we speak about it?
I don't think so. I don't see a need for it.
So that, I guess, would be my request
Unless-
on items that we have
I think,
questions about.
I think Marlon and Craig have asked for some quotes out there, but I think the $2.1 to $2.4 million grant is why we've asked for those quotes. We want to see if we can spend it through that $7.1 billion allocation before we come here.
So as a body, are there items that we would not want to have, I guess, money spent on prior to us hearing feedback from our questions tonight? And outside of that, I guess there would be the authority or implicit authority that you can move forward with some of these items. Is that how?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that, absolutely. I think that's fair.
I guess mine would be that broadband piece that I would like further clarification as to, are there other alternatives that might not be so cost heavy?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that money could be shifted towards a solution at our middle school or something else within the district. Outside of that, everything else seemed to be fine. I know there's still some questions with the community center, but that's going to be a long haul with a lot of people at the table. So,
Yeah, yep, but it's exciting. This is exciting. It's,
Conversation.
yeah, and it's not easy. Todd, I know sometimes we both get heated a little bit, but I appreciate the work you're doing and your concerns, so.
other questions or comments or items? Ms. Scheibert, Mr. Moore, Ms. Mull, Ms. Novak? Is that enough awkward silence?
Perfect.
All right. That takes us to Board of Education reports. We'll go down the line. Ms. Mulligan, anything to report this evening?
I just want to make sure, I'm on the Success by Six committee out of United Way. And Claremont County has put out a list of books, little children's books, that help children in trauma and anxiety. And I just want to, I'll send somebody, maybe I'll send it to Deb. Make sure that our teachers, our libraries have those books and make use of them. And I saw one of those random emails that we get from I don't know where, a webinar on equity-minded leadership for K-12 leaders. And it's put on by this Connect Education Group. It costs $175 on September 9th. Does anybody know anything about that? Would be worth our while.
I don't think so. But actually, Kathy, could you share the information? And we could definitely look into that.
Okay.
That is not on my radar right now.
It's on September 9th, which I think is a weekday, 2 to 4 in the afternoon. But if anybody was available to watch it, it might, with our equity-based
Oh, it's online?
strategic plan. Might be interesting to
Webinar.
see what they have to
That'd be
say.
great if you could share the information.
I'll send it to you then. Thanks.
And I'll take it from there.
That's all.
Thank you, Kathy. Michelle, anything to report this evening?
Yeah, Butler County Health Department, Hamilton City Health Department, and Middletown Health Department all put out a statement today. They support the notion that learning should be face-to-face and that kids should be in the classroom, that this is the safest place for them to be. They also recommended that all students and all staff are required to wear masks. I know that we had said that we'd be flexible and we would pivot when we needed to pivot. And I think that this statement by our health director, who we've relied on to provide insight into our policies as a district, I think that we need to pivot at this point. I think it makes sense for us to require our kids, our students, and our staff to all wear masks from the first day. I think that being reactive would be waiting until someone gets sick and then deciding that kids need to wear masks. But I think that we've said from the beginning that we'll follow the science. We'll listen to the recommendations of our health directors. And so I hope that our administration will do that. And I hope from day one, our kids will all be required to wear masks. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Can I jump in here? Do I have to
You
wait
can.
my turn?
Yeah.
Do I have to wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You're fine. Go.
Okay, so Michelle, that's one thing I wanted to share tonight. So, we receive updates daily, right? Of what's going on in the COVID world and safety precautions. So last week we received new quarantine guidelines, which I shared that with you. You have a copy of that tonight. Right today at 3:30. We received we saw the press release from the health commissioners. So the plan that we would like to proceed with at this point in time is, because there's all new data is coming out daily when it comes to vaccination rates, to the ages of children, that are actually being affected by this new variant. Jackie is planning on attending the next board meeting. Also, we are in constant conversation with Jackie. In the past, we've made our decisions when we've pivoted on the data, and we have lots of new data coming out right now. So we'd like to take the time to actually look at that information. We do know that it's fluid. We do know that we need to look at this, and that pivoting is a possibility. So, but with all the new information coming out so quickly, we'd like to process it first so we can make an educated decision, and we are working with Jackie on that.
Okay, but I don't think we need to wait till the next board meeting. If the administration needs to pivot for the safety and security of our kids in the classroom, then you shouldn't wait until, 2 weeks out or however long to make that decision.
And if we do find that we need to pivot, I know Mr. Stiles is ready to make that decision. And Jackie would be here on the 23rd if we've had to make that decision before the 23rd to actually walk us through how we landed on that decision.
Okay.
But do know that that is a topic of conversation daily, especially with all the information coming out. And the safety of our students and staff is number one for us also.
But this is still 1 week of potential exposure to the Delta variant without masks.
And we hear you, and we are in constant conversation.
Ms. Scheibert or Mr. Bertrand? If we're going truly down the line, then we can go Mr. Bertrand.
I didn't mean to jump in.
Oh, you're fine. I'm glad.
I'm tired.
Are you?
I'll take a break tonight.
You're entitled. Ms. Scheibert?
I just wanted to commend Mrs. Hauser and Mr. Stiles for the convocation that the teachers had last week. Mrs. Mulligan and I were there, and he gave a really good overview of the Passport to Tomorrow plan for the teachers, and I think everybody was sent a little synopsis of the beginnings of the plan, and it was a very nice celebration, and there was a little gathering afterwards with a cookout, and I think it was very well received. It was a beautiful day, and everybody seemed kind of energized to, even though they probably would like summer to last a few more weeks or months, they seemed happy to be together again. So I thought it was a very
It was a
nice
great day.
thing. Yes, it was.
It was a great day. Thank you. So I have good news. Rosa Parks is complete. So the construction report, we've received the certificate of occupancy. So Rosa Parks is going to be ready on day one. They're still working through the punch list, bathroom tiles and a few minor repairs, the painting project. Apparently, we were able to get the same paint color, so we could blend the paints between the original building and the new. Let's see, what else? Grass was planted, but we all know what it's like to plant grass in July. So we're hoping for the best there, but Conger will come back in September or October and actually reseed and make sure we have grass there. The ribbon cutting ceremony, we're looking at late August, so we'll be able to get back to the community on the ribbon cutting ceremony. So that's a celebration.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
No comments tonight.
All right, well, just an exciting week. Welcome staff and all staff, teachers, students back into our buildings just in a couple days. I mean, this space will transform with young folks walking through. Just would like to welcome our new staff. I know we have new principals, new teachers, new folks throughout our district, and just welcome them with open arms. And to our athletes, our fall athletes are now back on the fields, and I went to an event last week where they were kind of welcoming everybody back, and it was neat to see all the kids excited about the start of their season. So that's it. That takes us to adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Bertram?
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign.